All right. Welcome to the pre-show, everybody. Thanks for being here. If you have tuned in or you're watching this on the replay, we are about 10 minutes away from getting started with our 220-1001 Core 1 A+ study group for June 2021. We have all new questions, just as we do every month. So I've got those ready to go. Here they are. You can't see them yet. They're right there. There are questions up on Socrative at professormesser.com/QA, which you can only see if you are visiting us live. Hello, everyone. Hello, chat room. Hi, everybody. It's a good day to do a study group. It's a little overcast outside. I think it might rain, but we're going to be good in here. We got plenty to do. In this first hour, I will ask you questions from the A+ exam objectives. And in the second hour, we just open up the phone lines. I take questions from the chat room. So we'll do that as well. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Joshua has your 1001 on June the 5th. What's today? Today's June the 8th. Oh, you passed on June the 5th. You already got through the 1001. Congratulations. That's fantastic. So you must be preparing for your 1002. And if that's the case, we're doing one of these tomorrow on the 1002. A little bit of a change to the normal schedule. So if you're somebody who is planning to take your 1002, come back this time tomorrow. Don't leave. No, stay here now, but also come back tomorrow. This is a little bit different. You'll see me straight up in the view of the camera in just a moment once we get started. This is not the actual show. This is our pre-show. So we are trying to get things started. I'm checking all my cameras. You can kind of see my camera setup. You can even see me. There I am. Hi. So I'm checking. As long as I have these four right here, those are my four cameras, and we're good shape. My Skype is up. My call-in is ready. I think we're in good shape. I'm recording down here. We're recording over here on the OBS. I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we're in good shape, everybody. This is a pretty good setup. This is one that has sort of evolved over time. You can't see the lights. The big lights are up here and on the side. You can't see those. I have a shot of the studio from somewhere on the Instagram or something. But there is a lot going on here. There's the mixer for the audio. There's the video switcher in front of me, which is a complete self-contained Blackmagic setup. I am able to watch this. This is my stream console, so I can see what's going on with the stream. This is the video switching console, so I can kind of see what you see, and then I've got ready to go on the preview side. You can see that's the preview button, and then the four cameras are here. I've got my primary screen that I normally use for doing pretty much everything. I've got my secondary screen for this same computer that I use to check the chat. This is the iPad I use to be able to see the presentation that is being played here so that I know what's coming up next. See how that works? And then this is actually showing the slides that you will ultimately see, and we're recording video on two. Can't really see the first one on the top, this one on the bottom. We're recording on two separate video streaming devices there. We can record in video recorders. And we've got, of course, streaming up here on the OBS. I'm recording on that local device as well. And we're recording on YouTube. So we have really four recordings going all at the same time, just to make sure that we don't lose anything. You may wonder, why are you doing four of them? Certainly two is enough. Well, if two was enough, we would have stopped with two. But two, as it turns out, not even close to being enough. So somebody at my front door. Of course there is. Of course, this time of the day. As I sit down and get started, just make sure it's not the ne'er-do-wells. It's probably, well, I don't know. I do know who that is. But that's just going to have to, that's just how it's going to have to happen. I'll have to send my better half a note. There we go. Okay. There. See, there's always something going on. But that's okay. We're in good shape. I wish it was pizza. Wouldn't that be great if just a random pizza delivery? Not even when I schedule. Just it showed up. No, it's a lot less interesting. It's the gentleman who is here to spray for fertilizer on my lawn. That's how exciting my day is right now. He just shows up whenever it's normal. He doesn't call me or set it up, which is fine. He knows he can come in and do whatever, but that's what he's doing. It's not someone calling to check on my car's extended warranty, but they call very often asking about an extended warranty on my car. They never talk to me, so they just keep calling, I guess. That's fine. Let's see. So that should work out. No, this is a professional fertilizer terminator sort of person. He handles, getting the bugs off the trees and making sure the grass doesn't die of whatever the grass dies of. You can tell I am extremely well read in the world of horticulture. I'm going to stick with computers. That's okay with everybody. That's why I have him. That's why I have Joe. Joe is here to spray the lawn. So that's why I have Joe, because Joe knows all of the details. So no problem there. Works just fine. I wish I had a little more really to do. Actually, I'm glad I don't have more to do right now, because that means something would not have worked right. But we've got about 3.5 minutes to go before we get started on the live stream. So grab a beverage, sit back. We'll get through all of these. We'll figure out the details. Joe does not bring any pizza. I should talk to Joe about doing that. Do you want the guy who's spraying chemicals on your lawn to bring pizza? I don't know if that's a good idea either. Probably not. That's at least something to think about. In the chat room, passed A+ last year using my videos, finished 6 months probation in a new IT role. Congratulations. You made it through the difficult part. Now it's all about making more of it happen. Just keep moving up, moving up, moving up, moving up. We can absolutely do that. Mike with the $10 donation. We've not even started yet. Mike's already on the case. Thank you so much for the donation. Mike says, thanks for helping me pass A+ recently. Could not have done it without your videos and practice exams. You could have. I think you could have, but I'm more than happy to help. You kind of did the hard part. The QA site is professormesser.com/QA. See how that works? So easy. Why does the lighting always look so dark, even though we know it's bright? Because it is completely black. I cannot see the wall back there behind me. It is completely black, but the lights are on me. You just can't see that they're on me. But you can kind of see, if I hold my hand up here, you can kind of see that this side of my hand is very bright. This side of my hand is very dark because there's no lights behind me. But and actually it's not that bright for this. But that's why. It seems a little weird, doesn't it? It seems like I'm here in the dark, because I am here in the dark. It's like this one spot where my nose happens to be bright. There happens to be, all of the light is pointed right here. And there's some behind me to light up behind me, but that's kind of it. I was told that CompTIA was going to include Chrome OS. Would that be next time? Actually, it was last time. They included a little bit of Chrome OS in the previous 900 series version. So that's, and they took it out, but maybe they'll put it back in. Who knows? In the next update. Just depends on what you start building this thing and scoping it out very, very wide, and it tends to go crazy. Well, the chat room has just been incredible. First, we had Mike with the $10 donation. Now Jack with a $15 donation. Thank you so much. Very kind for you to do. I put that there. People will often say, I don't want to buy notes. I don't want to buy these things you have, but I would like to donate. So I put that there to be able to make that happen. And thank you for doing that, because it really does go a long way. And Jack says, thanks, passed both 1001 and 1002 in a 2-week span. So Jack apparently has the secret. Whatever that secret is, Jack has it. 2 weeks is an incredibly aggressive schedule. I suspect Jack had some familiarity with the technology already. But what a great 2-week push to get that done. That's fantastic. Congratulations. And thank you again for the donation. So nice. It's 12 noon. Look at that. 12 noon. Let's pull up our presentation here. Green light, all looks good. I think we should get started. You know, I don't even know if I have the actual, I do have this ready to go, so let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2021 Professor Messer A+ study group, specifically our Core 1 221,001 A+ study group. This is our June 2021 study group. Thanks for joining us. In this study group, we're going to go through everything dealing with the A+ certification exam, at least a number of questions dealing with the A+ certification exam. And we've got a lot to go through. I've got all new questions every month we're going to step through. So you're going to be able to learn a little bit about that A+. And of course, all of our archives are online to go through and have a look at that. If you're here live and you're watching this as we're making it, thank you for being here. It's always fun to have you here because we do ask these questions interactively. If you'd like to participate live, this is not something you'd be able to do if you're watching the replay, but if you are here live, you can pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. As I'm told, it stands for question answer. That's what that is for. professormesser.com/QA. You can also go to your favorite app store and download an app for this because, of course, there's an app for this. It is called the Socrative Student app because the service we use is called Socrative. The Socrative Student app you can get from your favorite app store, but it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right, PROFESSORMESSER, and that will get you there. You'll be able to visit that site. You'll be able to see the questions that are on there. If you do all of that the way that hopefully it should work, you've got either gone to the page or you're looking at this, then you will see that there is a question waiting for you. We call this our rewind question because it is a question that we have from last month to see if you're able to get and answer the questions. This question asks, a user's application makes changes to a router configuration while the application is active. Which of the following describes this functionality? Is it P2P, NAT, UPnP, MAC filtering, or WPA2? A user's application makes changes to a router configuration while the application is active. Which of the following describes this functionality? Is it P2P, NAT, UPnP, MAC filtering, or WPA2? As always, please, no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer, and we will come back to this question in just a moment. Well, as I mentioned, we do one of these study groups every month. Thank you for being here for our A+ study group. Of course, there's all kinds of things happening here during the week. When you're not watching, when I'm not streaming live, there's always something happening. You can always find out when the latest things are happening by joining our YouTube channel and subscribing at professormesser.com/YouTube or click the YouTube icon at the top of the Professor Messer website. Don't forget about our daily pop quiz questions for A+. They're available on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter and on Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram. It's a great way to get the same question, but the Instagram just comes with a pretty picture, which I think is nice. So have a look at those. They're all available for you. And if you're just wanting to find me on any social media, you type in professormesser.com/the name of that social media thing, and you'll find me. If there is me on there, you will find me. If I'm not there, then you won't find me. It's physics, I guess. Well, if you're watching this for continuing education unit credit, and if you are watching this for CEU credit, then you know what that means. If you don't know what that means, then this doesn't apply to you. But you will find that sometime during this first hour, I will give you information about how you can earn a credit of CEU. So have a look at that. Listen in for it. It's during that first hour. You'll be able to hear it when it happens, but stay awake. Stay alert. You'll be able to find that whenever it comes along during this first hour. Today, we're going to talk about questions that come from the 221,001 exam. As many of you know, to earn your A+ certification, you have to take two exams, the 221,001 and the 221,002. These two exams were released on January 15th of 2019. Now, normally these would rotate through about every 3 years or so, 3.5 years before they retire. But you'll notice that I've put the estimated exam retirement probably around the July timeframe of 2022. This may actually even get pushed a little. We'll have to see. We're so far from any of that happening that it's not something we have to worry about here in June of 2021. This means that if you are studying for your A+ certification and you're planning that right now, keep doing it. You've got plenty of time before this certification even comes close to retiring. You are in the right place. You're studying the right thing. You'll get through this well before any type of retirement happens to occur. So great place to be. These exams are almost identical in structure. They're 90 minutes long each. There are a maximum of 90 questions on the exam, but there's a different scoring for each one. Both are scaled the same way between 100 and 900. For the 1001, you have to score 675. For the 1002, you have to score 700. I do put here that there's quite a few new topics on these compared to the older versions. And I say that because if you have older materials that you're studying from that are for the 900 series or 800 series, throw those out. Get study materials that are for specifically the 221,001 and the 221,002. And make sure you have the objectives, which you can find at professormesser.com/objectives. Today, we're going to go through the topics associated with this exam. This is the 221,001. So all of our questions today will be on mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. We'll go through each one of those today, and we'll start with that first question. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Also, don't forget that there's a lot more than just the free videos that are available on my website. And of course, every video I make is available for you to watch online for free for all of these courses. You don't have to log in. There's no registration. There's nothing you have to do. They're not behind a paywall. But some of you would like to have a downloadable version. You'd like to have audio MP3s. You'd like my course notes. You'd like my practice exams. You'd like my exam hacks ebook. Well, I've just bundled all of that together into one single set of resources. You can find it in my success bundle at professormesser.com/1001success. You can also see links from that on the menus of my website. It's a great way to find everything in one place. And of course, you can buy individual, for the most part, you can buy individual pieces of this. Some things in here you cannot buy. They are exclusive, like my exam hacks ebook. Can't buy that by itself. So that's one of those that's kind of a bonus you get whenever you purchase the Success Bundle, or in the case of the Exam Hacks book, you purchase another item. I'll tell you about that in just a moment. There's also free questions on my site. My Take 10 Challenge is an archive of these study groups. You can find the details of that at professormesser.com/take10, and there are questions there for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. There's a video replay of this study group available immediately afterwards, but there is also an audio-only version of this available in podcast form. So if you have a podcast listening program that automatically downloads these and puts them on your mobile device, you can add us to the list by visiting professormesser.com/podcast. And that's a great place to go to add the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus study group podcasts. So it'll be ready to go when you are. If you go out and look at the YouTube channel, about a day afterwards, my marketing manager, Lori, who is watching this, everybody say hi to Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this and going through it and putting timestamps into the YouTube video description, which is an incredibly fast way to find what you're looking for. You just click on the timestamp inside of the YouTube video description. It takes you right to that section of the video. You will see that the details are there for questions, for answers, for people calling in. If you're trying to find that particular part of the video, you know someone called in about a certain topic, it's listed in there. Lori has written down all of these things for you, and it goes back years. You can find that on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. Don't forget about my course notes as well. Some of you are wondering, how do I keep track of 137 videos? It's 18 and a half hours of content. Well, it's my course notes. These course notes are a summary of all of the text, all the graphics, all of the charts that are important from my videos, and they're summarized into a single set of notes. That's the physical version that I was holding. There's also a digital version of the course notes. Let's see if I have them here on the screen. There they are. So here's the digital version, the PDF. So you can go through and look at all of the details there. It's all there. You will miss nothing from those the details of those videos that you're watching, all available on my website. You've got plenty that you can pour through with those. The course notes we've spent a lot of time on to make sure that it gives you exactly what you need for your exam. It doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace the videos. It's another study material that you can use to make sure that you've got everything ready to go. It should be kind of the last thing that you use before you walk into that room. It's fantastic to have all of that available in one single place, and you know it's correct, you know it's comprehensive, and you know it follows the exam objectives to the T because I made them that way. Find it at professormesser.com/1001 notes. For those of you that have been watching the website, you'll notice that there are also discounted vouchers that you can get from the Professor Messer website. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. Get a discount. You don't have to have a discount code. You don't have to play the coupon game. I hate the coupon game. You should not have to have an add-on to your browser to play a game of coupons. Instead, why don't we just price it so that it's automatically discounted? You'll find that at professormesser.com/vouchers, where you can not only get your discounted voucher, but you also, if you buy it from my site, free, you get along with this a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook, which is a list of all of these life hacks, all based around the testing process, the study, the testing, and even some things you could do after the testing process. Very useful. Find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. So for those of you that you haven't wanted to buy or invest in the Success Bundle, and I can appreciate that, you thought, I just want a way to get my hands on these exam hacks. And I think these exam hacks are very useful, especially if you've never gone into a CompTIA exam before. Well, if you're going to get your voucher, that's a perfect time to get one. I do not have EU vouchers. These vouchers, unfortunately, are only available in the United States, territories, Canada, Mexico. That's it. I'm afraid I don't have any for the EU. I'm so sorry. But if you are inside of the United States, territories, or North America in general, you can, of course, get them from there as well. Very useful to have. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier. Enough of me talking. The question asked, a user's application makes changes to a router configuration while the application is active. Which of the following describes this functionality? Is it P2P, NAT, UPnP, MAC filtering, or WPA2? Let's show these results, and you can see that 56% of you have chosen UPnP, whatever that is. We'll talk about that in a moment. 16% of you said that would be NAT, the network address translation. 11% said P2P, and then 9% said MAC filtering, 8% said WPA2, effectively a three-way tie for third there. Well, 57% of you said universal plug and play. That's what UPnP stands for. Universal plug and play. So you can go here to have your system automatically reconfigure itself, your router automatically reconfigure itself based on what applications you happen to be running. That's kind of scary, isn't it? If it sounds scary, that's because it is scary. The application you're using can make changes to your firewall that effectively allows inbound traffic. That's something you would never use in an enterprise network. It was created especially for these home-based networks where people don't know how to get into a router and reconfigure it so that you can have your own Minecraft server. That's really what this was designed for. Maybe not specifically Minecraft, but any type of service that's on the inside of your network. The best practice for this, generally speaking, is to disable it. Why would you allow applications to change the functionality of your firewall? But that is what universal plug and play is. That's what it was designed to do. It's not plug and play, which is a Windows feature. This is called universal plug and play, which has nothing to do with the plug and play that's in an operating system. So, of course, we named it exactly the same thing with the word universal in front of it, as if we would all figure that out. So that's at least an idea of where we would go with that. It is universal plug and play is the right answer. 15% of you said network address translation, which is an extremely useful capability on these routers that we use at home that changes our internal IP addresses to something external that we can use to communicate over the network. But NAT in itself does not make changes to a router configuration while an application is active. NAT just works all the time, whether it's there or not. So it would not be NAT. P2P, which is peer-to-peer, is a communications method that applications use to communicate with each other. It does not describe changes being made to a router configuration. MAC filtering is kind of an administrative function for a network device that allows you to filter out devices based on their media access control address. It's not based on a Macintosh. It's not based on an Apple piece of hardware. It's based on a network card, a network adapter. So that's what the MAC filtering refers to. And of course, MAC filtering doesn't make changes to router configuration while an application is active. And WPA2 is an encryption method for wireless networks, a very common encryption method. That encryption method does not make changes to the router configuration. The only thing that makes those changes is universal plug and play, and 59% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Well, let's jump now into some new questions. And I have some available for you. And my first new question of the month is a performance-based question. For those of you not familiar with performance-based questions, they are questions at the very beginning of your exam. It's a handful of questions, somewhere 5 or so questions, plus or minus, that you will get at the beginning of your exam. The performance-based questions mean that they are anything but multiple choice. They might be a matching question. They could be putting things in a particular order. You could have a question that's a drag and drop question. You have to figure out what that might happen to be. I have a performance-based question to start off our study group today. This one is a fill in the blank, which you actually don't get on your exam, is a fill in the blank. So let's see how you do with this fill in the blank. And it asks this question to name these interfaces. And I have 5 interfaces on the screen, an A, B, C, D, and E. For those of you listening on the audio podcast, I'm so sorry. On these video type questions, there's nothing there I can help you with. There's one connector on A. There's another one on B. Here's a third one on C. The audio description of the connectors doesn't help very much, but at least you're able to see them on the screen. And I have both the connector on the computer or the device side, and I have the cable side as well, at least part of it. So you can get a feel. And these are effectively to scale. So that might help as well. I tried to keep them to scale when I put them on the screen. So there's A, B, C, D, and E. You've got the interface names on the Socrative side. You can visit the link at the bottom of your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer this question, what it happens to be. Remember what you put in, and I'm going to have it show it on my side so I can see what you're putting in. A lot of you are doing very, very well with this. You're spot on. I think some of you have been working with your connectors. So a lot of people doing very, very, very well with this. There are some that are popping up interestingly. We'll go through some I wasn't expecting. There's always something I'm not expecting when we go through these questions. I built these questions out about a week before, and I put them online. I prepare everything. It takes about a half a day to put all these questions together. And sometimes I think, well, this question, they're going to answer a certain way. But very often, it goes very differently. So I'm never quite sure what I'm going to see. It's a constant surprise, which I think is awesome. You can find this and answer it at professormesser.com/QA. And of course, as always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're sitting right in front of the exam right now, and we're having to type these in. I think on the exam, you would probably get a list of 10 different interface types that you would maybe drag and drop or match to, and there would be some left over. But in my particular case, I wanted to make it a little bit harder than that. So you do have to go through and really understand what each one of these connectors might be. Number of you are answering this one pretty straight on. I'm not really fooling anybody with some of these, and most of you, I think, are doing pretty well with what these happen to be. But some of you are running into these and thinking, I'm not sure what that one happens to be. I'm not sure what that one there is. We'll find out in a moment, though, to be able to work through all of those. This is one of the important parts of this, is those types of interfaces are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you have the objectives. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll find all of the objectives there to go through. Could be very useful to have all of that. Let's see how you did with naming all of these. Let's see what these interfaces happen to be. Let's step through each one of these. We'll start with the one on the far left, which we marked as A. And I think almost everybody, as I'm looking through, this is obviously not a multiple choice question, so I have to kind of summarize everything viewing through. Most people here said HDMI. Some of you said, interestingly enough, full-size HDMI, which I guess technically this is the full-size HDMI connection. As many of you know by looking at the videos and the content that I have on my videos around these interfaces, there's a smaller HDMI type as well. This is not that smaller type because I kept it at least to scale. That was one of the points I was making with having you step through this, but there are other HDMI interface types that are common. On my camera, for example, I have a mini HDMI connection. It's not mini, what is it, type C, type D? There's different types of HDMI. But all you need to know for this particular answer, HDMI is fine. I will accept that. Perfect answer for what we're looking at. And if you've plugged in any video device, I don't know, in the last 10 years, you probably got that one right. I think most of you did. Second on our list is a relatively new interface. You probably have a device at this point that has this functionality. If you don't, you certainly will in the future. It's our USB-C connector. USB-C refers to the connector type, refers to this specific interface format. But you can put different types of signals over a USB-C connection. For example, I put Thunderbolt signals over the USB-C connections on my computer. So it's USB-C describes the physical interface that you see on the screen here. It does not describe the data going over that interface. So this USB-C, very specific. And of course, it could be USB data going over USB-C. What's nice about this, of course, is there's no up or down anymore. You just plug it in, it works. Finally, the poor USB developers finally got to a point where we can make a connector that you can plug in and not have to do it 3 times before you get it right. Third on our list is an interface you might not have run into before, a video-based interface that is DisplayPort. DisplayPort is an increasingly popular interface type, especially if you are using high-end video. If you're a gamer, you want higher resolutions and faster response times, you need a video format that's able to keep up with those speeds. We didn't think about 120 changes on the screen every second, 120 hertz, 160, 240. We have these video systems now. We're getting faster and faster frame rates, and we need a video that can keep up with it. We never planned HDMI to be able to do that. We need something that can support higher bandwidths, that can send more data at the same time over those interface connections. DisplayPort is one of those connection types. Fourth on our list is one that is relatively familiar. I think most of you are familiar with a USB, specifically USB Type A connector. This is a USB connection. This does send USB, not only a USB connector, but the data over that connector is USB. Very rarely would you see another type of data being sent over that. But the USB Type A, increasingly common. This is the connector that only works if you plug it in 3 times. You plug it in one way, it doesn't fit. You turn it around, you plug it in the other way, it doesn't fit. You turn it back around and plug it in, and finally it will fit. So you have to do it 3 times. That's the important part of that USB Type A connector, which is why we finally got the USB Type C connector. Who wants to go through that process every single time? So lastly, we have, and that is, although it's not colored, and the colors are important, we don't know what version of USB that happens to be, but it seems to be one of the 2.0, maybe the 1.0 versions, 1.1 versions of it. So there you go. That's the USB Type A connector. And the last one on the list, which probably most of you were looking at saying, what is that connector type? Technically speaking, the connector type is a mini DisplayPort connector. Mini DisplayPort connector. That is the mini DisplayPort connector. Now, those of you familiar with how this particular connector is used is that other things have used this connector type as well to send different signals. So although we call this the mini DisplayPort connector, you might also see people refer to this as a Thunderbolt connector, because we did use that connector for Thunderbolt, which I would accept. I'd take that as some of you even put in the answers, mini DisplayPort / Thunderbolt. Perfectly reasonable. And I would accept that for both. I would accept mini DisplayPort. I would accept Thunderbolt or a combination of those. Not mini Thunderbolt, although it sort of is a mini Thunderbolt, but that's not what it is. It's Thunderbolt or mini DisplayPort. And that's what you would find. Those are increasingly uncommon. We're kind of moving away from that mini DisplayPort connector and moving, now that USB-C is available, is very useful. I think we did run FireWire over those ports as well. So that's another one. I guess I could take FireWire, but FireWire is not in the CompTIA A+ exam objectives. For good reason. We just don't use it anymore. It's just not seen anymore. So FireWire is not one of those things that you will run into on the exam. I would not have given you something on the screen that you would not have on the exam, but I would accept that as an accurate representation of that interface. So those 5 interfaces again: HDMI, USB-C, DisplayPort, USB Type A, and Mini DisplayPort. That is our performance-based question of the month. Now, as usual, for those of you that have done this and been on these before, you could have gotten more than one wrong here. You could have gotten some right and some wrong. Now, CompTIA has said on their website in their frequently asked questions that they could at times on their exams give you partial credit, but they do not tell you if they are going to give you partial credit. So you never know if you're going to get partial credit. All you know is that it's possible. So you might get partial credit or you might not. Only thing I can recommend to you is to do the best you can, and just whatever the answers are going to be and whatever the grading is going to be is something that you don't have control of anyway. So do the best you can. You're going to do fine. That's the goal. If you know everything in the exam objectives, you will do just fine with this. Let's shift gears and do a more traditional question with this. Let's start with a question that is a multiple choice based question. We're going back to the multiple choice. And the multiple choice based question here asks, a network outage has taken the DHCP server offline. Which of the following could be assigned to local devices? And I have for you 5 IP addresses. They are 169.254.77.250. The next one is 192.168.101.88. The third is 10.54.177.68. The last is 172.16.120.121. And finally on our list, 127.0.0.120. So quite a list of IP addresses. I'm so glad I went through the process of having to figure out what all of those might be. That is where the answers are. If you'd like to answer this, go to professormesser.com/QA. Again, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We don't want to go through any of those. So hopefully that's one that you're familiar with. Whenever you start looking at these questions, though, it may help you to be able to go through and find maybe some of the questions that might help you that you know already. So you can get rid of those. It could be the calculatus, elimitatus kind of thing. So that I think would also help whenever you're stepping through this, is figuring out the details. Of course, as I mentioned, please no mention of this in the chat room, no hints in the chat room either. We can figure out. Yeah, CompTIA does not do a all of the above, none of the above, some of the above, which indeed aren't really useful. They are not questions that really help, especially when you have 90 possible questions in an exam that you have to finish in 90 minutes. So that's a challenge if you are ever in that situation. That's a lot to go through. So they don't give you some of these questions where you have to really go through and figuring out the details. So that's whenever I go through this, what I mean when I say that they don't really do all of the above, none of the above, some of the above, because it's not useful. Now, 90 is the maximum number of questions, as some of the people in the chat room have said. That fewer questions. You might get fewer than 90, which always helps. It's always a mixture. And each question appears, as far as we know, to be worth a different number of questions. So you never know exactly how many points a certain question may be worth to be able to have that. Can you skip questions and come back to them in the exam? You absolutely can. You can move around to any question at any time. So you could start at the very end of the exam and work your way backwards if you wanted to. I don't know why you do that, but you could. It's at least the capability is there. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, a network outage has taken the DHCP server offline. Which of the following could be assigned to local devices? Is it 169.254.77.250? Is it 192.168.101.88? Is it 10.54.177.68? Is it 172.16.120.121? Or is it 127.0.0.120? It's got to be one of those, right? So that is, let's see how you did. Let's show the results. 56% of you have said it's 169.254.77.250. 24% of you say it's 192.168.101.88. And then you have single digits for all three of the others. 127.00.120 got 9%. 172.16.120.121 got 5%. And then 10.54.177.68 got 7%. Well, if we go with the majority here, 169.254.77.250, they say that's what you would see if the DHCP server was suddenly unavailable. For those of you that haven't seen these IP addresses before, these are called automatic private IP addressing addresses. APIPA is what those are for. They are what we also refer to as a link local address. That means that if you have been assigned this address, you can communicate to anyone else on your local IP subnet that also has been assigned one of these APIPA addresses, but you can't communicate outside of this local subnet. Routers will not route this outside of the local subnet. You can't obviously communicate to the internet if you've been assigned an APIPA address. This is one where you really do have to look for these and understand why you would have been assigned these. The way that you know if you have been assigned an APIPA address is the range of addresses. There is a reserve range from 169.254.0.0 through 169.254.255.255. This effectively means that 169.254, anything starting with 169.254 is an APIPA address. Now, in reality, the first 255 addresses and the last 255 addresses are reserved. So what you will really be assigned is an address in the range of 169.254.1.0 through 169.254.254.255. So if your address is somewhere in there, and you don't have to memorize the whole thing, just memorize those first two numbers, 169.254. If you see that, you have been assigned a link local address, an APIPA address. So there is why whenever you start stepping through this, that you will have this automatically assigned to you. It will see that it has one that has been, usually it's because you are not communicating or can't communicate to a DHCP server and you don't have anything that has been locally assigned on your computer. So automatically the operating system says, well, I need to give you something, and at least maybe I can give you an IP address that will allow you to communicate to other devices on your local subnet. So I'm going to assign you 169.254. A set of random numbers, and it'll use ARP and make sure that nobody else happens to be using those numbers and then assign it to your machine. And so now you can at least communicate a little bit. You can't communicate to the internet, can't do much at all. But the real key is 169.254. You could have a network that's a 169.253 or 169.255. Those are legitimate IP addresses, so don't confuse it with that. Make sure you know both of those octets, 169.254, to be able to do that. Those are the important things. If your machine is assigned that, here's what it will look like in your IP config. You can see that there's the number 169.254.228.109. And notice the subnet mask. It has a very large range that it assigns on the subnet of 255.255.0.0. So that's what you will see. And you'll see that and wonder, wait, for some reason, I was not able to get an IP address from the DHCP server. Now let's do some additional troubleshooting to find out why. So that is the answer to this question, is the APIPA address of 169.254.77.250. 56% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, we have three other addresses here that are RFC 1918 addresses. They are addresses that we consider to be private addresses. They would be addresses that are behind our router that are not routable on the internet. Those ranges are things you also need to know, especially for your Network Plus. But the 192.168, the 10, anything starting with 10 and anything starting with 172.16 through 172.20, we'll have those there. They're private IP address ranges that you can work through. The last one on the list, 127.0.0.120, is a loopback address. There are on your operating system loopback built into your computer, a private virtual IP address that's inside every single operating system that allows you to at least test to make sure that the system is working right from an IP perspective. Anything starting with 127 is a loopback address in IP version 4. Did I say 20? It's 31, 16 through 31. You've got an octet there of 16 that you're able to step through. So it's useful to have the 192, the 10, the 172 networks, because those can be used to put on different subnets inside of your network and not use any public IP addresses out on the internet. Very useful to have that there. So hopefully that helped you too. Now, why did I put the 120 there? Because I can. Well, the entire loopback range is 127 127.0.0.0/8. It's a huge range. Some operating systems will only respond to 127.0.0.1 if you were to ping it. But you'll notice if you try to ping anything that's 127 dot anything, technically speaking, those are loopback addresses that should respond in an operating system. They do not always. Some operating systems work differently, but that is the standard. That is the reserved range at the very least. So you folks did really well with this one. That was the right answer. 57% got it absolutely right, of 169.254.77.250. Let's do another multiple choice based question, shall we? I've got another one for you. This one asks, a system administrator has upgraded a system by replacing a single memory module with two separate modules. Which of the following would describe this upgrade? And for some reason, no question mark there. So bad grammar on my side. The possible answers are multi-channel, RAID 1, multi-core, ECC, or hyper-threading. Possible answers: multi-channel, RAID 1, multi-core, ECC, or hyper-threading. A system administrator has upgraded a system by replacing a single memory module with two separate modules. Which of the following would describe this upgrade? Question mark. That's one you have to step through. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answers. Is the loopback good for troubleshooting internal hardware? The loopback is good for troubleshooting the software inside of your system. That's the real key, is knowing, is your IP stack, we call the software that runs TCP/IP in your system, the IP stack. Is your IP stack working? It's a great place to start. Is the basic system software that runs the network able to communicate? Because if that doesn't, nothing is going to work across the network. So very useful to have that there. So I think that's where you would find those. I know it's kind of hard to see this on the screen there. My head's in the way. Maybe that will help if I move these down. Does not really test the NIC, doesn't really test hardware, doesn't test anything associated with the hardware of the system. It tests to make sure that the operating system software that runs TCP/IP is working, is operating correctly. That is the key for your loopback address. So that's why you would check the loopback. You don't really usually start with checking the loopback. If you suspect that maybe something has gone awry in the operating system itself, maybe then you check the loopback. Usually we start by pinging our local address, our local physical address, and that's a good way to check your network interface card. So that would be one. Only one answer is correct. I know it lets you pick more than one, but it's only one answer. Only do one answer on, I think, almost all of these. Only do one answer. So have a look at those, see if you figure those out. Yeah, you don't see the loopback fail very often. There is a process in Windows that allows you to rebuild the networking subsystem software. And it's for that very reason, that sometimes there will be system software that gets corrupted with malware, gets corrupted through something else that got installed in the OS. And you can tell Windows, you know what, rebuild your IP stack, please, and we'll try pinging your loopback again. It's a good troubleshooting step to go through. So hopefully that will help you with these. Let's see how you did with this question. The question again was, a system administrator has upgraded a system by replacing a single memory module with two separate modules. Which of the following would describe this upgrade? Is it multi-channel, RAID 1, multi-core, ECC, or hyper-threading? Our results say 66% of you say it's multi-channel. We have 11% that said multi-core, and then effectively a three-way tie for third, single digits for RAID 1, ECC, and hyper-threading. So you've got a few choices to run through. Now, the key here was we were taking a single memory module and we were effectively replacing it with two separate modules. You should probably look at your motherboard and look at the memory you're using in your motherboard if you're running on a system to see if you're running a motherboard that supports multi-channel memory. That's what this is. And it could be dual channel, triple channel, quad channel. Usually that's what you'll see dual channel. It's not often you'll see triple or quad, but they do exist. But if you look at your motherboard, you will see some options there. Sometimes even the memory modules of the motherboard will be colored like this. So it almost telling you, fill in the reds and make sure. So if you had, for instance, 16 gig of memory in your system, don't buy a single 16 gig a memory module and put it into one of these slots, you want to buy 2 8 gig modules and spread them across 2 separate slots, because that is going to increase the throughput of the memory communication. Very, very useful and very fast to have that there. So that's why you have to also make sure the motherboard supports that. So, of course, check the documentation of your motherboard manual. It will tell you very clearly in the manual, this is multi-channel. Here's the slots you would put it in to enable that multi-channel capability. So check your documentation. Always check the documentation of your motherboard manual, because there will be certain PCI slots that you will want to use over others. There will be memory modules that are preferable over others. Very useful to have that there. So hopefully that would be useful to know as well. The colors may help you. So if you see different colors, that is almost immediately something that tells you, oh, well, there's different things I could be doing with this memory. Let me check my documentation and make sure that I'm plugged into the right connections there. That's going to help you as well. Multi-channel memory was the right answer. If you answered A, multi-channel, 66% of you got that one absolutely right. 12% said multi-core. That refers to the number of CPU engines that are inside of a physical CPU package. So that would not be related to changing the amount of memory modules in a system. That if you were changing the CPU, which of course rarely happens, the CPU is one that is not really something you would run into, and that would be multi-core. But here we're talking about memory. 9% of you said RAID 1. RAID is the redundant array of inexpensive or independent disks. Now, RAID 1 is a drive technology. It's not used with memory, so that would not apply in this particular case. We've got ECC, which is you can use ECC in a number of ways. For the A+, ECC is the memory type that is able to identify errors as it's going through. The checking of errors in memory is a pretty important part, because errors can occur inside of memory. Usually we see ECC memory is a parity type that is able to identify errors and then be able, of course, after that, to be able to correct the error, which is great for servers. You don't usually see ECC memory in a desktop computer that you use at home. And lastly, we've got hyperthreading. Hyperthreading is a technology in a CPU that would allow it to perform a little bit more efficiently by effectively speeding up the number of threads that are going through one single particular core of a CPU. Hyperthreading, of course, is still used in another set of CPUs. In fact, the CPU you're using probably does some type of hyperthreading, but that has nothing to do with the memory that you would have in your system. Multi-channel is the only technology here that has anything to do with replacing memory, and that would be the right answer. 67% of you chose A, multi-channel. That is absolutely correct. Well done. Those of you that have been through these study groups before, you know that I tell you all the time to always get a good book, watch the videos, get plenty of hands-on, and then get lots of Q&A. We're doing a lot of Q&A today. But there's a lot that you need to know for the exam. The exam objectives are massive for the A+ certification exams. And one of the things I found is that a lot of the questions that you find online, not so good. Some of them are very, very bad, in fact. I know this because I get emails from you all the time saying, I found this on another site. This seems to be wrong. Is it? And of course, I can never answer all of these that you send me. I just say, ask the person on the website why they wrote a bad question, and maybe they'll help you. So what I thought is we need better questions. We need something that will really help prepare us for the A+ certification exam. So I wrote my own. I wrote a set of practice exams specifically for the A+ certification. And whenever you start looking at practice exams, they need to be exams that cover the same percentage of topics. They need to be very focused on the topics of the exam, and they need to be questions that are not these crazy questions out of left field that you weren't expecting or that are badly written. They need to be very well written. And so I thought I'll write these. We'll put them into a book. I created my practice exams as 3 separate 90-question practice exams that include multiple choice and performance-based questions. In fact, we have one on my screen. Let's see if I can pull it up. Here's my book. I've got it right in front of me right now. A network connection in a conference room was installed years ago, and there's no documentation for the cable run. Connecting a device to the cable results in a successful Ethernet connection, so the other end of the cable should terminate somewhere in the wiring closet. Which of these tools would be the best choice to find the other end of the network connection? Would that be a cable tester, a tone generator, a multimeter, or a crimper? Now, if you're using some type of PDF reader that would allow you to go through and modify the PDF, you could certainly do that by clicking on any one of these. But if you want to see the quick answer, you can click right here on the screen because it's a PDF. I've got it so that you can very quickly do that. But I can click the details here that will immediately take me to the correct page for this. And it says, in fact, the answer is B, tone generator. And I give you an answer here, a description of the answer that really does describe why this does not happen to be the correct, or why this is the correct answer here. Now, one of the problems whenever I start reading through these is that I need to be able to understand if I got it wrong, why I got it wrong. So every incorrect answer in my book has a full explanation of why I thought that question is incorrect. So you will know immediately why you got it wrong. And in fact, you'll probably learn something that you'll be able to use for the exam. I also put at the bottom a QR code that will take you right to the video associated with this particular question. So if you need additional training on this, you click that, it opens up the video, or if you've got the physical book, you point your camera at it. You could even do that right now for those of you listening. You can point your camera at this screen and open up the QR code and go right to the Network Tools video. So this is where it really helps give you that feedback loop of understanding, did I get it right or get it wrong? And even if you get it right, it might help you to read through the incorrect answers to understand why cable tester, multimeter, or crimper would not have been the right answer for this one. These are my practice exams. You can find out more about the Core 1 practice exams by going to professormesser.com/core1pe. I think that would help you as well if you're someone who's working to figure out the details of this. Have a look through and see if that would help you with some of the things you're doing. And you can also bundle this together with my course notes and get a little bit of a discount too. So there's a little bit of a cost benefit already built into the site. Again, no coupon hunting for this. The discounts are already built in if you want to buy all of those things together. Very useful to have. Let's do some more questions. I've got another multiple choice question for you that asks, which of the following best describes the software that manages virtual machines? Which of the following best describes the software that manages virtual machines? Is it a BIOS, SAS, VDI, cache, or hypervisor? Which of the following best describes the software that manages virtual machines? Is it a BIOS, SAS, VDI, cache, or hypervisor? It's got to be one of those. If you happen to know the answer, please know answering in the chat room. Instead, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer to figure out what those happen to be. Very useful. Yeah, my practice exams, it's a PDF. I publish it as a PDF so that anybody can use this regardless of what operating system they're using, regardless of what mobile device they're using. But if you have a PDF editor, you can actually take notes in the book. You can circle the answer you think it is. It becomes a little more interactive. So I always recommend people trying out the interactive functions of their PDF reader and being able to do that. The other part of it, I didn't even show in my PDF reader, when you finish it, I've got a back button in mine. So if I hit the back button, it goes right back to the original question. I can just go to the next question on my list. So that's another way to hop through one by one. I can go through each one of those to be able to figure out the details of that. It comes in handy. So that's why whenever I say use the best tools for what you're doing, a good PDF reader can really be a great tool to be able to work through those. There's a number of great PDF readers and editors out there. Some of them do cost some money, but you've at least got some options to be able to do that. And folks in the chat room are already mentioning what some of those options might be. So I think that's great. Let's see how you did with this one. This question asks, which of the following best describes the software that manages virtual machines? Is it a BIOS? Is it SAS? Is it VDI? Is it cache? Or is it hypervisor? Let's show the results. 80% of you chose hypervisor. That was a pretty big number. You really felt like that was the right answer. 12% of you, though, say VDI. So we got double digits, very small double digits on that one, but VDI is what other people thought. 6% said SAS, 2% said BIOS, and 0% said cache. Wouldn't that be interesting if it was the 0%? Well, it would be interesting and it would be wrong because the answer really was hypervisor. Most of you knew what this was. If you've done anything with virtual machines of any kind, whether it's virtual machines on your desktop or virtual machines in a corporate or enterprise environment, then you're probably very familiar with a hypervisor. This is the software that manages the communication between all of these different virtual machines. Extremely useful to have. And of course, requirement if you're doing anything from a VM perspective. So if you're in an enterprise environment, probably using something like vSphere from the VMware folks. This happens to be the Oracle VirtualBox software on my screen here that I run on my local desktop. But this is where the software is able to manage the CPU, the hardware for the network interface cards, any of the security between all of those. Very important to have. And it's critical if you're doing anything from a virtualization perspective that you understand how to properly use the hypervisor. For those of you interested in learning more, this comes directly from my 220.1001 section 4.2 client-side virtualization. The answer is always there at the bottom of the screen. You always know exactly where that's coming from. So very useful to have those capabilities. The exam does not specifically differentiate between type 1 and type 2. So you'll not see any mention of that in my exam objectives, but trust me, there's a whole industry, a whole career ahead of you doing nothing but working with hypervisors if that's what you'd like to do. Plenty of things that you will learn and continue to learn associated with hypervisors. The answer there would indeed be E. 81% of you got that one absolutely correct. VDI, the virtual desktop interface, is one that is used to manage desktops over a virtual environment. VDI describes that type of environment, but it does not describe software that manages virtual machines. It's more of virtual machines running in a cloud that happen to be a desktop. Only 12% of you chose that one. 5% said SaaS, software as a service. The software that manages virtual machines, I guess, could be software as a service, but software as a service does not describe software that manages virtual machines. As I showed, the one that's on my desktop certainly is not software as a service that's running on my local desktop. And BIOS, the basic input-output system of your computer, is not the software that manages virtual machines either. And nobody thought it was cache. There's lots of caches on your system. I would not use a cache to be able to manage a virtual machine. The only answer here that makes any sense is the last one. Answer E, hypervisor, was the one that we would use. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, and that's someone who already has a CompTIA or some other type of certification, or you need CEUs for some other reason, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link, brings up a form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put the June 2021 Core 1 study group. And then on a line by itself in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, hypervisor. That's what you need to find. The super secret code word of the month is hypervisor. That is the one you would want to put in there. And then you could put anything else you would like into the body of that message. I read through every single one of those. I unfortunately am not able to respond back to every single one of those because I get hundreds of these in a single month, but I at least will be able to see. I do like reading through everything you send, so I'm more than happy to do that. And I do appreciate everything you do and put into those. Hopefully that will, I usually send out those CEUs, by the way, about a week, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but I get them out in about a week's time. So please be patient. You don't have to email me every hour wondering where your CEU is because it takes me a while. I usually sit down, and when I've got time to really pour through them, I just do them all at the same time. So we try to make that happen, but that's an easy way. We have time for another question, so let's get another one in while we have this time. The question asks, a network administrator is installing a RAID 10 array. What is the minimum number of drives required to build this array? Is it 2, 3, 4, 8, or 10? Got a few answers to choose from there. A network administrator is installing a RAID 10 array. What is the minimum number of drives required to build this array? Is it 2, 3, 4, 8, or 10? Lock in your answer, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll be able to figure out the details of what this happens to be. Whenever I start looking at the answers and trying to figure out answers from this. There's some I can probably throw out immediately. So make sure you go through and do your own calculatus limitatus there and get rid of the ones that you think might not fit into what this happens to be. That might be your way to summarize this. On your exam, you'll probably only get 4 answers. Some of the questions will give you more than 4, but not a lot. Usually it's 4 possible answers. I make mine a little bit more difficult by giving you an extra one. So I make 5. Hopefully it makes it harder. I'm thinking it makes it harder. We'll have to see if that's the way it works out. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's not hard at all when I do it that way. I think it does make it a little bit harder. RAID 10 array. I don't know that a lot of us have installed a lot of RAID 10 arrays. Probably not the most popular array type, but I see it out there from time to time. So somebody's running it. Somebody has it there to be able to work through. The chat room, would I ever consider streaming on Twitch? Well, not for this, I guess. This is not a Twitchy kind of thing. I guess it's sort of a game show, but not really. Doesn't really fit the Twitch model, does it? So currently, no. There's no plans to stream on Twitch. And certainly not plans for you to watch me play Xbox on Twitch. Nobody wants that. I barely can stand watching myself play the Xbox on Twitch. So I would not expect anyone else to want to do that either. What RAID setup do I recommend? I think most people run RAID 5. That's probably the most common RAID setup, or a RAID 5 type, a RAID 5-ish. Many people that create arrays have a RAID 5 that they sort of customize for their specific pieces. So we'll have to see what happens for that. I know there's a lot of other things on Twitch, but we're on YouTube. It works great. So we'll just stick with what we got, which seems to be working quite well for us. Twitch just doesn't quite fit our model with what we're doing and having those there. Let's see how you did with this one. A network administrator is installing a RAID 10 array. What is the minimum number of drives required to build this array? So we'll have to see. I heard RAID on the exams are not the ones used most in the real world. No, you have it the other way around. There's a lot of different RAID types. The ones that are on the exam are probably the 4 most popular by far. That you will run into. So certainly what you will find. Let's see how you did with this one. The results say 71% of you would have 4 drives in the array. And then effectively a 4-way tie for all the others. So it would be 2, 3, 8, and 10 got 9, 9, 5, and 6% respectively. So RAID is an important thing to consider. Fortunately, there's only 4 RAID types you need to know for the exam. There's RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and RAID 10. Sometimes you'll see RAID 10 referred to as RAID 1 plus 0, which is differently than RAID 01, which you'll sometimes see written as RAID 0 plus 1, which is different than RAID 1 plus 0. And if you go back and look at the details of this, you will know what I mean by that. You'll see that in the video, which is section 5.3, troubleshooting hard drives. You will need 4 drives minimum to be able to figure that out, to be able to get RAID 1 plus 0 or RAID 10 working for this. So it becomes important that you have all 4 of those drives. If somebody says to you, we're installing this, we want RAID 10, buy enough drives that we can get that started. So hopefully that will help you. 3 drives are required for RAID 5, 2 for RAID 1, and you would need at least 2 for RAID 0 as well. Those are the minimums, obviously, but that's what you would want to work through. This is one where with RAID 10 is one of those few formats that you could lose more than 1 drive of the certain set. You could possibly lose more than 1 drive and still remain up and running. If you lose 2 drives and they happen to be of the same set of mirrored stripes, well, then that's a problem. So there you go. That's the real issue. But you can possibly lose more than 1 drive with RAID 10 and still be up and running. You could lose 2 drives with RAID 10 and be down as well. That's why I don't tend to mention that very often. It depends on which drives they are. And if you look at the format for RAID 10, which we just don't have time for today, you would understand what I mean. The answer here, by far, 71% of you said 4 is the number of drives that you would use. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do one more. We can fit one more in here. We can do a little bit of overtime, right? And fit this last question in. The question asked, or asks, a user would like to send and receive Gmail messages from their mail client instead of a browser. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be IMAP, SNMP, HTTPS, RDP, or LDAP? A user would like to send and receive Gmail messages from their mail client instead of a browser. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be IMAP, SNMP, HTTPS, RDP, or LDAP? Which one would it be? Hopefully you know the answer. If you think you do, don't answer in the chat room. Go to professormusser.com/QA and lock in your answer. To have that there. It's got to be one of those, right? We need to know these different protocols to be able to run and work on the A+ exam, and these are certainly protocols. Every single one of these is listed in the exam objectives. You should know every single one. If you're looking at this list and wondering, I don't know what that one is, make a note of it. Go look that one up. It might help to be able to have that there. In the chat room, RAID 0, RAID 1, which would I choose in a personal computer? Well, I think RAID 1 is the only one that provides any redundancy. I would think on your personal computer, redundancy is what you're shooting for, not speed, especially these days, which you can set up everything as in some type, or you should be running in some type of SSD. That's your speed now. You don't have to worry so much about the speed of drives on a personal computer. So you'd probably run maybe RAID 1 with multiple SSDs. That would be useful. If you lose one SSD, you'd still be up and running. The SSDs are just so reliable, though. You almost don't necessarily need it in a personal computer. You'd be better off just having a good backup policy. Unless you're really changing data a lot. If you're running your own business or you're doing something where you're producing a lot of content or a lot of data, well, then maybe RAID does make sense for you. You don't ever know for all of these. Let's see how you do with this one. A number of you have locked in your answers, so let's see how you did. A user would like to send and receive Gmail messages from their mail client instead of a browser. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it IMAP, SNMP, HTTPS, RDP, or LDAP? 76% of you say IMAP, 18% of you say SNMP. 3% said HTTPS, 1% said RDP, 1% said LDAP. Well, with 77%, that is pretty strong. You see this a lot, though, when people are using these commercial email providers like Gmail. Very common to see this. And you could bring up Gmail in a browser, use Gmail as you would normally do it. That's what I do with my Gmail most of the time. I'm in a browser. But if you're on a mobile device, maybe you don't want to use a browser. Maybe you would like to have those email messages downloaded to your machine. And in that particular case, you would need some type of protocol that would support that. Fortunately, Gmail, Microsoft Exchange's online services, their number of different online services, their iCloud and Yahoo Mail all support things like IMAP 4. So IMAP, in some cases, even POP3. IMAP, very useful for being able to send and receive messages for this. The IMAP does work. So of this list, the only thing there, and IMAP's what you would use to be able to receive those. Obviously, we don't send with IMAP. We send with SMTP, which was not on the list. So you would not choose that one. The only option here that even comes close to providing at least half of this functionality is the very first one with IMAP. So hopefully that will help. The 77% of you got that one absolutely correct. Would not be SNMP. That's the Simple Network Management Protocol. If you are querying a server, querying a switch, a router, a firewall, SNMP is what does that. HTTPS is what you would be using in the browser, so that doesn't make sense. That's not what we would use from our mail client. RDP, the remote desktop protocol, also not what we would use to be able to see Gmail messages in our mail client. And then LDAP, this the lightweight directory access protocol, you primarily use for name services and some type of communication and verification of authentication to that name service. But that would not be used for mail either. The only option here that provides any type of this functionality is the first one, IMAP, where we can receive messages from Gmail. 77% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. I think that's one where we really have to know these protocols, and they sure throw a lot of protocols at you on this exam. So you certainly need to know what those protocols happen to be. It's going to help you as you go through it. This exam is a big one, and it covers a lot of different topics. The first thing you should have on your machine is these objectives. Make sure you have this. Download the objectives. You have a link to the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. Make sure you get those objectives. Incredibly useful to have that there. They're a great checklist, and they should be the last thing you look through before you decide to book your exam, because it will tell you if you're ready to take the exam or not. Fantastic to have that capability. We have another one of these study groups tomorrow. We don't usually do them back to back. There's usually at least a day in between, but we'll see if my voice will hold up. We'll go tomorrow. We have our Core 2 study group. Make sure you come back tomorrow for that. We have another Core 1 and Core 2 study group in July, on July the 6th and 8th. We also have a Network Plus study group a week from tomorrow, rather. No, it's a week from today, isn't it? Because I changed the dates around. So make sure you look at the calendar for this month to be able to know that. And on the 14th of July is Network Plus. And then, of course, we've got Security Plus this month and on the 21st of July. They're all on my calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. You'll be able to see all of those. Can you believe we've gone through an hour of Q&A just like that? But we got more questions and answers. I'll take questions from you in the after show. Stick around for that. We'll be able to answer those. We've also got, of course, my course notes and practice exams at professormesser.com/1001success. Don't forget about my discount vouchers. No crazy codes or coupons required. Just go to professormesser.com/vouchers. If you liked this particular study group, follow us and click the like button right now before you go anywhere. It really does help with our folks at YouTube. I have a representative YouTube that helps me with things on my channel. They like to see when you like things. So please click that like button if you were able to learn at least something in this last hour. It sure helps me as you're going through this as well. And if you want to know more, you can always go to Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram and find out more about these as well. Well, thanks for being here in this first hour. Stick around for the after show. We thank you for being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Let's see if I can actually, make things happen here. There we go. It's time for the after show, everybody. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the like, Brandon. I appreciate it. Really do. It really does help. And if you subscribe and you click bells and do all of those things, helps as well. But I don't try to push that too crazy. Let me get my system up and running here. If you bear with me just a moment, I am going to get the phone lines up and running. I just have to remember how to do that. It's always a mystery when I come in after a couple weeks off, because last week was my bye week, I guess you could say. And where we didn't have a live stream last week. And then I have to remember now what button does what again. That's always the hardest part. So if you'll bear with me a moment, I have to bring up my Skype. I have to call into my own show because it's on the cloud, as it should be, right? That's the way the cloud works. There we go. And it says, "Thank you." Well, you're welcome. Let me click the right things on my side. And if I do that, the nice lady will say, "Enter your 6-digit PIN." If I remember my 6-digit PIN, I will type that in. And what do you think of that, nice lady? Welcome, Professor Messer. Why, thank you. How nice of you to welcome me. And if you are watching this, I guess I need to change my graphic on the screen so that you're able to see what we're doing here as well. You are able to call into the show. It is a toll-free number in the United States, 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. You call in for free because it's a toll-free number from anywhere. Although these days, I guess most of our calling plans usually are for free, aren't they? But if you're outside of the continental United States, it's not for free, but there's a free way you can call in by using Skype. You can use Skype, and Skype does not require Skype minutes if you call a toll-free number. So you can call this number and call in as well, but you have to put the +1 at the beginning. So it's +1 855-785-7545, and that will get you there. So that's what that special code is. That's why we have that right there at the beginning, to have those capabilities. Wow. And a reference to Magic Jack in the chat room. There's something I haven't seen in a while. Is that even still a product up and running. They're still making money with Magic Jack. I haven't seen advertising for that, and I don't think forever. Just the capabilities of our mobile phones we're able to do with Skype and other calling services. I would think that would have gone the way of video rental services in a lot of ways. So that's you can only receive with POP3 and IMAP. You cannot send. You'll get over it, though. I think you'll be okay. You will make it. Yeah, who has the QCat? Anybody have those QCats? We'll scan the code. I had one. Serial connected over my 9-pin serial link. To have that there certainly was useful for 2 seconds. It was useful for a moment, and then it was no longer useful. It just went away immediately. For those of you not understanding what that is, that's one you can Google later, is QCAT, CUECAT, to have that there. Let's start off by heading to the phone lines. We can start with the 757 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. This is William calling from Hampton, Newport News area, home of the greatest naval shipbuilders in the world.
Absolutely is. Thank you for calling, sir. What can we do for you?
Well, how's your family, Professor?
Everything here is remarkably well. My kids have not gone crazy. Everyone still likes each other after all of the things that have happened in the last year and a half, so I can't complain.
Yeah. You should thank them for their support on my behalf.
I will. Thank you.
You know something? I had been listening to Sound Bites, which comes on a public radio station, WGMC, out of Greece, Rochester area, in New York, and the panelists had so talked up the virtues of Linux, and so I determined that once I got my laptop repaired, which I have already done, got a SSD and all that, and got better speed, I decided I was going to download Ubuntu, which I did, and life has been beautiful since then. The one roadblock that I have been running into, however, is removing and adding printers, and that has been a real bear. Bless my neighbor, bless his heart, he gave me his Lexmark, which he replaced with an HP. The problem is that the HP is is in a network, a wireless network, and I keep seeing it, and I can't remove it and add the Lexmark. So I was wondering if you could talk me through that, perhaps.
This is probably one of the biggest challenges with Linux. Is not that the operating system is not functional. It's not that it doesn't have support. It's not that it doesn't have the capabilities to do a lot of great things in the operating system itself. In fact, if you're on the Professor Messer website right now, then you are on a number of Linux machines that are keeping that whole system running. Incredibly useful operating system. I often will kid whenever I talk to people and say, well, it would be a great operating system if it would only work. And I really just say that to make the Linux people crazy because it works great. I use it all the time. My entire business, everything I do online relies on Linux, an incredibly important operating system. The challenge, though, is getting Linux to work properly at the desktop. And the only way to do that is if you have someone who can write drivers and processes for end users to be able to install those drivers properly. And the two biggest problems people generally have when they're installing Linux on their local machine is wireless functionality, although that's gotten much better lately. And the other one, as you're mentioning, is printers. That is another big problem because there's very few printers are well supported in Linux. A lot of printers are okay supported in Linux, and a number of printers you just can't find support for in Linux, but very useful to have that capability. Every Linux front end has a different way to go about installing these drivers and these intricacies, so it's nothing I can really talk you through over an environment like this, but if there is a driver for it, and it's something that is available, then you should be able to install that driver and get it up and running for the Lexmark device that you have. Now, why you're seeing his HP seems unusual if his HP is on his local network. I could certainly see you know what it might be is that HP is probably one of those new ones that is set up for the direct print from your mobile devices, which is more of an ad hoc printing functionality. So you're so close to them in the neighborhood that you're seeing that printer advertise itself to mobile devices most likely. Is there a way to get rid of that? There might be a way to filter it out in Linux, filter out that particular SSID. But I don't know of a way to do that off the top of my head. I bet there is a way. There's always a way in some comp file in Linux to make that happen. And you have to, you only have to Google around for weeks until you find that one thread that gives you the answer that you need that actually makes the thing work. And unfortunately, I have no idea what that happens to be. I don't tend to run a lot of Linux on my desktop just because I have other things to do. And I need it to work when I connect to a printer, and I need it to work when I connect to the wireless network. And there's just too many. It's just not quite as robust as I would prefer for a desktop computer. But I run it all the time in a VM. I run it all the time from my servers. I just never have to run into printing or wireless problems when I do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you there still?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah. I was going to also ask, use you as a sounding board for my career choice. I have downloaded the practice exam, and I'm doing okay with them. I'm still missing like about 30. I think, it was like 30 out of the 90 questions on them. So I'm having to, go back to those. But anyway, to get to the point, my objective is I'm a Navy veteran, and at first I was just thinking about taking the A plus and just continuing getting a degree in computer information systems. But now I realize that if I'm going to work as a civilian for the Department of the Navy or Department of Defense, that I need that Server Plus. So my idea is to eventually get into the executive suite of like CIO or CTO, something like that. And I think Server Plus plus a degree in computer information system is going to get me to where I'm going. And I just wanted to use you as a sounding board and see what you thought about that.
There are indeed those two things are pretty important. The one you mentioned, when you mentioned the area you were in, I immediately thought Security Plus, because if you're in that Northeast DC, Virginia, federal government area, having a Security Plus is an incredibly useful credential to have on your resume. Everybody who's hiring is looking for Security Plus. I often tell people, depending on where you live in the country, make sure you look to see what employers are looking for in your area, because it does vary. The requirements you'll see in that DC area will be very different than requirements that you might see in Denver or Chicago or anywhere, or in Florida, where I am. So you never know exactly what it will be until you look at the jobs that are being posted. And you're not wrong. I think Security Plus would be something you should be working towards. Now, the other side of that, and I have a video that I made, which is how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about the importance of certifications because they are important. But there's also an importance in a formal degree. Having some type of two-year or four-year degree becomes increasingly important, especially if you're planning to move up into management. Even today, managers tend to see that, especially a four-year degree, as being valuable, or in some cases a prerequisite before you get into management.
Good.
And it doesn't have to necessarily be a technical degree, although if you're planning to move into a technical management role, that certainly helps. My degree was in business management, had really no technical anything associated with it. And they made me a manager. Boy, I'm not sure that was a smart idea on their part. They did it anyway. It worked out okay for a little bit of time. And then I decided it wasn't for me and went off to do something else. But that's one where my degree was not a technical degree, and it doesn't have to be technical, but it helps.
How did you like being a systems engineer?
That was the job for me. I worked primarily in the last half of my career, probably a little bit more than the last half of my career working for someone else, was working as a a representative of a manufacturer as a systems engineer, senior systems engineer. So mine was going out as a primarily pre-sales, but a little bit of post-sales, primarily pre-sales systems engineer, and work with customers who were having needs or problems and had a solution for it. And we could plug it in and we could make things work. And it was always something new and different. It was, it's not a job for everyone because it requires, in many cases, quite a bit of travel, and certainly a lot of traveling during the day, depending on where you happen to be. Sometimes I had jobs where my territory was the world, and I would travel to Europe, I would travel to Australia, I would travel to Asia, I would travel all over. I had other jobs that were just in the state where I live. Now I live in Florida, which means there's 8 hours to drive if you wanted to drive from one side of the state to the other, probably a little more. So having just one state as your territory doesn't necessarily mean it's a small territory, but there's some territories for systems engineers that are a block of New York City. So you never know what that means. Your territory can be very different depending on the company, but I loved the job. I loved something new every day. I loved that I was always presented with challenges that most of the time when I would have a meeting with a customer, most of the time they would have a question I wouldn't know the answer because they had something very unique they were trying to do, something that was not common. And I would have to go, well, I don't know, but I know the people that do, and I'll go get the answer and bring it back to you. So often it was really constant growth, constant knowledge gathering, something new every day. You met a lot of great people. And as much as we like to say that the sales process is just awful and there's of course bad salespeople and bad engineers wherever you go, but I would say the vast majority of people I worked with in my company and the vast majority of the customers I worked with were just great people. And it was just nice going and visiting and spending time and learning about their networks and walking around their data centers and learning the technology and something new every day. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was one of the best parts of my career up to this point. I think this has been the culmination, but it's sort of the gathering of all of the knowledge I made during that time allows me to now do this. So, but something I really, really like to do. It was just a lot of fun.
Well, I tell you what, Professor, I am really stoked about the study group, the video courses, and I'm definitely intent on getting the course notes. Yeah. Thank you for all that you do, sir.
I appreciate it, William. Thanks for the call. Best of luck.
All right. Bye-bye.
It's one of those things that if you've never been in IT before, there is a job for you that will allow you to do whatever you like, wherever you would like to do it. I would literally have a job where I would walk in and my boss would say, we need somebody in Australia. Well, I know it's Thursday, but we have a presentation that needs to be done on Monday. Can you be in Australia? Can you get on a plane tonight? I'm like, sure, let's go. Or we're doing a big rollout of a product. We need it installed by a professional in Scotland for 2 weeks. Like, okay, let's go to Scotland for 2 weeks. And I would do that. Just remarkable. And that was a lot of travel. There's obviously advantages and disadvantages for every job, but what a lot of fun to have that there. So that's one where I think if you're someone who would like to try something different, would like to really push your capabilities and learn not just technically, but learn communication skills, it's a great job to have. Back to the phones. Let's go back to 757. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from? I just lost them. Where'd they go? They went away. They decided they've had enough of my nonsense. Let's go to 240 then. Thanks for holding. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. My name is Oliver, and I'm calling from Maryland.
Hey, Oliver. What can we do for you?
So I'm like trying to think which certification I should go for after the A+, and I've decided to go for my Network Plus. Also because I do want to work in like a NOC, and I also get class credit for it. I was just wondering what skill or skills I should learn as I'm going for the Network Plus, whether it would be like complementary or a completely different skill. A couple options I do have is like PowerShell, Python, maybe like Cisco iOS commands and Bash, maybe even SQL. I was just wondering which skill I should go for. I do want to just go for like one skill at a time and stick to it. I was just wondering your opinion on which is the most important skill, especially for a novice in the field.
Well, this is good. You were able to hone in on exactly where I would have probably prompted you to go next, because a lot of people ask me questions about, I've got my A+, what should I do next? And the answer I have is, I don't know. What are you trying to do? But you already know what you would like to do. You can see that there's some interest in the networking side of things. Network operations centers are a great place to hone your skills on the networking side. You meet a lot of very smart networking people. You learn a lot about networks in general. And it's a good jumping off point to learn more about how to manage networks, especially switching and routing. And if you are at that point, this is what I did. I started on the operating system side. Once I got into networking, I knew that networks was what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something very detailed on the networking side. And it sounds like you've already got in your mind, that's some interesting stuff, and I would like to learn more about that. And Network Plus is a great certification to get as an entry-level networking professional. That positions you very well for a network operations center position, certainly an entry-level NOC position. The place you go from there and sort of complementary skills, there's a lot of options and they're many and varied. I often tell people in these study groups, if you have some skills in automation, you will use those skills throughout your career. And I often tell people, become familiar with using scripting, with understanding Python, of course, is what everybody is looking at. And if you're getting into networking, Python is used extensively on the networking side, especially for managing devices and communicating via APIs or programmatically modifying the configurations of these devices. And it also leverages you very well for moving into the cloud-based infrastructure. And for networking, there's a lot of cloud-based infrastructure to pull from. So Python is it's just such a Swiss Army knife of technology that I think everybody should have some knowledge of Python. Of course, you should also consider getting some knowledge in other scripting technologies. Once you know Python, it's very easy to apply this knowledge towards shell scripting on Linux, or batch files, or PowerShell, more specifically on the Windows side. Those are incredibly useful skills to have. You had mentioned SQL, and although SQL has a place in technology, it doesn't quite have the same set of skills, or doesn't bring the same technical skills to the table as something like Python or shell scripting might do for your, or PowerShell. You don't often run into a lot of SQL challenges on the networking side. You push that off to the database people. So if you're planning to get into database administration, SQL is going to help you a lot. Otherwise, I'd probably not focus on that quite specifically. If I had to choose from any of those, Python is a great one. It's great not only for your personal skill sets, but when you walk into a job, especially an interview, and you say, well, I have my Network Plus, and let me tell you about the things I've done with Python scripting. And then you have some practical examples of what you've done with Python in your home lab. That's incredibly interesting to me as someone who was a hiring manager at one time, because I can see you've got the skills to be able to do things like that. So that's a perfect place to go. If I had to make any strong recommendation, pick PowerShell or Python, go with one of those, and you will never go wrong in IT.
Right. And my second question is, so I spoke with a recruiter recently for a network operations center position.
Great.
And I was caught off guard in a way, because they did ask me like 25 networking questions, and I haven't done networking in a very long time. The last exam I took was like the CSET, and even that's expired. So do you think, he said to specifically come back with a CCNA just so I do good on that particular on the phone interview, like exam. Do you think doing the Network Plus is enough to become a NOC analyst or some sort of like that type of job?
Well, this is probably the question that people often try to weigh when they're looking at networking, is they say, do I get a Network Plus or do I go to the Cisco CCNA? The answer is that those are two very, very very different certifications. They are different in their scope. They're different in their complexity and their difficulty level, and they're different in the jobs that they are positioning you for. If you're trying to get an entry-level position in a NOC, knowing CCNA will probably make them feel very comfortable that you know some of the technologies that you speak of, but you're almost overqualifying yourself for that particular role. CCNA is not an entry-level cert. It is your sort of an intermediate or next level cert after entry level. But a number of people know that they are really pushing towards network administration. They really eventually want to get to a point where they have access to manage the switches and configure the routers. And if you know that's the direction you're going, some people choose to skip over Network Plus. I think the answer to this question is really back on what the employers are looking for. So I would go back to that company and look at the job postings that they put out already for for NOC help desk or entry-level NOC analyst, whatever they call it. Also look at open positions they have for network administrator, network engineer, systems administrator, whatever they're calling it at that organization. See what certifications they're asking for. And maybe having those really written down on a piece of paper, they may say, we want everybody to have a Network Plus when they start. Okay, well, let me go get the Network Plus. Or it might even not even mention Network Plus, and everything is heavily focused on Cisco. Well, then you might want to reconsider and say, oh, I know CCNA is not entry level, but they seem to really push that in this job because it's so networking focused. Let me go and do that. I'm gonna refer you back to the employer to see what they're asking about, because every employer is a little bit different in how they have a focus on that, Oliver.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking your time to answer my questions. And I'm actually taking my 1002 next Tuesday, so just preparing for that. I think I'm ready. So excellent.
Best of luck with your 1002, and let us know how the job hunt goes with the Network Operations Center.
Yeah, will do. Thank you.
Thanks, Oliver. It's always interesting to me the differences that employers have. It's part of, I think, their corporate culture, which we tend to kind of discard at times and think that it's something that's not important, but in many cases becomes incredibly important. We've also seen this most recently where people have, we've been working outside of the office, and now for many of us, it's back into the office. And so we're now going back at least a certain amount of time. So having those skills are going to help with that corporate culture, and they may have a certain minimum they'd like you to have. Let's go back to the phones, the 774 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, is that me?
It is you.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm Tom from West London.
Hey, Tom.
Thanks for all the videos. First of all, I've got my exam tomorrow for 1001, and your practice exams has been a massive help in identifying gaps. And yeah. So my question is, hopefully this all goes well, and I'll move on to the second part. And you talked about this bit already, about sort of things like labs and scripting. Would you recommend between doing it client side on my gaming PC, the 6 cores and 16 gig of RAM, going with something like Azure or AWS or Google and doing it in the cloud, or buying an old Xeon server and building a full bare bones metal with a switch plugged into it, for sort of learning, in particular in my case, Active Directory, because that seems to be what's in demand around where I am.
It's one of those situations where you do whatever you happen to have access to at the time. Whenever I'm setting up, I did a number of years ago, I did a Windows 7 course where I set up a domain running Windows Server, and then I had Windows 7 devices that were all connecting to that. I would show them all on the screen at the same time. It's still out on my YouTube channel. But I did the entire course virtually on virtual machines that were local on my system. It gave me a lot more control over the operating system. I was able to set up everything and tweak it and manage it locally. I knew that I wouldn't have to rely on network connections to be able to make all of these things work properly. So for my needs, doing it all on my local machine as virtual machines was a perfect solution, and it works great to do it that way. But now that Microsoft has such an extensive Azure offering, and you can do so much of this in the cloud, I have been finding a lot of what I have done is cloud-based these days. I just did a section for the new Network Plus that I'm working on, and it has a whole section on virtualization. Well, I just loaded up a bunch of cloud services and grabbed the information I needed from there and put it right into the course. It was so simple to do. I didn't have to load up anything locally. I didn't have to do anything. It was fantastic. When you start combining that, though, you start putting things in the cloud and you're wanting the cloud to talk to devices that are local, it becomes a little more complicated from a communications perspective. But if you got the whole thing happening in the cloud, that makes it really, really easy to have happen. And Azure is a great way to do that because it's so Microsoft centric. I think any one of those works. You can't go wrong. But because there is such a huge emphasis in Azure and AWS, anything cloud-based these days has such a huge emphasis that I would really recommend trying that out first in the cloud, because if you're sitting in the room with an employer in an interview, you can talk about, well, let me tell you what I did in the Azure cloud when I rolled up my own Active Directory infrastructure. Only took a couple of minutes. It was crazy. And then I loaded up Windows 10 and we connected them and had everything running. And here's what we ran. That's a great story. And you're using technologies they want people to be familiar with. Even if maybe it did take you 5 minutes to load up Azure AD in the cloud and get it running. You did it. It was running. It was there. In fact, you had time to then play around with it and do things with it. That brings to the table a different set of skills than just loading that up on your local machine. Now, if you really want to try both, you certainly could, but we're talking about learning enough skills that you could bring to an employer to make them understand that you knew what was going on, and not everybody does this. So that's why I think that doing something in the cloud has a little bit more personal gain to you than perhaps loading it up locally on a local VM.
Awesome, that's really helpful. So I'll definitely go and use my 6-month free trial with I think it's 6 months to get with Microsoft and go and have a play with it.
Where do you get a 6-month free trial with this? Is that something anybody else could do?
I'm not sure. So I know I definitely had one with Google because I was running a Valheim server for 6 months on their free trial, which gets you several $100s worth. Or I think it's several $100s worth of processor time.
Wow.
So, and that's available to anyone with a Google account. You just register as a developer and you can spin up virtual machines for 6 months. Wow.
That's fantastic. So take advantage of that if you possibly can and be able to do that. That was great to hear, and take advantage of that. That's any employer would love it if you walked in and talked cloud with them.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. That's been really helpful.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the call. Whenever you start getting into cloud, I'm pretty well invested on the cloud side. Not just from if you're on ProfessorMesser.com, you're on cloud servers. If you're purchasing any of my products and you're downloading it from AWS. If you are connecting to my website, you're really not connecting to my website. You're really connecting to Cloudflare, which is virtualized systems that are all over the cloud, physically located in different places around the world. So I get local caching in India and the UK and Idaho. So I've got a lot of access to the cloud just in the things that I'm running. In fact, my son is finishing up his cloud degree right now. I think he'll finish next month. And I think he'll be able to walk out the door with skills that all of the employers out there are interested in people having, which is how do we take what we have now and be able to run and support and secure it in these cloud-based environments. And unless you have some skills there and been working with it, it's deer in the headlights time. And interestingly enough, the cloud, I won't say it's hard. The cloud is, of course, complex, and it has things you have to learn. And there's quite an interesting learning curve there. But if you're a technologist, these are just skills that you're adding on with your existing blocks of knowledge. It's not like this is insurmountable. It's not brain surgery. That's what I'm trying to say. You can learn this. It is doable, and it's a set of skills that everyone wants right now. So at all, if you have a chance to do some AWS, some Azure, some Rackspace Cloud, whatever it is, get that cloud-based knowledge and start using it. It can only help you when you walk in the door with an employer. Let's go to the phones, the 704 area code. Wow. Hello, caller. Which name are you calling from?
My name is Mohammed, and I'm calling from Charlotte, North Carolina.
It's a little difficult to hear you, Mohammed, but give us an idea of your question.
Oh,
that's better.
I am a biology major, and I am transitioning back into the IT field. And currently, I'm trying to get some admissions like into college so I can start my master's program in cybersecurity.
Great.
And like I know, so a lot of people, that is a big leap or a big transition. So I've been asking around what are the steps in order for me to get my certifications, but I've been getting a lot of recommendations that I need to go directly for my Security Plus. So, but currently I'm studying for my A Plus, which I've already scheduled for at the end of this month. So my question is, what are your thoughts or recommendations when it comes to cybersecurity? Because I think I'm going by it in a step-by-step way, but what can put me in a better position to at least get me a good entry level? Because even though I don't have that much extensive experience in the IT world, but I'm very much interested in it, and it has got me hooked for quite a while now.
Great. I think your perspective of your step-by-step moving into the world of cybersecurity is probably the best or the most positive way to go about doing it. If you go out and try to find in your area, and you're in a very good geography in the United States for these types of jobs, there's tons of IT in your area. If you go out and look at the jobs available in the different companies just in your local area, look at and see if there are entry-level positions. And in your area, there might be a number of security operations centers or SOCs in your area. And if possible, that means there's probably more entry-level options into security. Traditionally, there's not a lot of entry-level jobs in security relative to the rest of IT. If you're just trying to get a job working in the IT department, it's generally as a more generic help desk position. That's how you start in a lot of organizations. And by doing that, they're able to see your work ethic. They're trying to understand how much you understand of the technologies. And then they will move you out of the help desk and put you somewhere that's a little more specific into things that you would like to do. But because there's not a lot of entry-level positions in security relative to the rest of IT, it's hard to find entry-level jobs that are specific to security. So although I appreciate the idea of going out and getting a cybersecurity degree to get a Security Plus certification, both of those valuable skills, important certifications, and degrees to have, you may find that there's no entry-level jobs out of college to support the things that you've been working on. But that's okay. Get that entry-level job wherever it happens to be. Get the help desk job, get the SOC job, get the NOC job, whatever it is, wherever they'll put you. Get in the door. This is what I'm telling everybody. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you have a degree in databases, in computer science. If you want to be in IT, get that IT entry-level position and get in that chair for at least 9 months to a year and learn everything you possibly can about the company, about their technologies, and about the people that work on their technologies, so that you can then move into the networking team, the security team, the data center team, the operations team, whatever it happens to be in your environment, the Windows desktop, the Windows server, the cloud-based systems, whatever that company is running. Find those teams and begin having a relationship with them and work with them is one of the best things you can do. So don't worry so much about needing to focus your knowledge and your formal degree so that the first job you get is going to be security, because it could possibly not be security. But there is plenty of upward mobility. There are tons of security jobs waiting for trained professionals to move into. You just need to get yourself in the door so that you can then move up to the next level, and then the next level, and then the next level. It's like a video game. You're just going to try to level up as quickly as you can. The fortunate part about IT is that it is relatively easy to level up and that there's really no max level in IT. You just keep moving up as far as you can, up and up and up and up until you find the niche that works best for you and the level that works best for you. I was able to go through my entire career, almost all of it as a systems engineer. We talked earlier about a little bit of time where I was a manager, and I don't think I was a great manager. I think I was an okay manager. It wasn't for me, and I thought I'm happier being an engineer. I moved back to being a systems engineer and just took off from there, and had more upward mobility as an SE than I had as a manager, interestingly enough. So my recommendation for you is learn everything you can about the things that interest you. Take the jobs, whatever happens to be available in the IT field, and you will start seeing the opportunities arrive so that you can, of course, move into a different area of the organization or move into a different organization in your area that will allow you to do things that are more of an interest to you. What's interesting is that whatever you do now is going to change as the years go by. There will be new technologies that come out 10 years from now that none of us have thought of yet that we will need good technologists for. Well, guess what? Nobody knows what they are yet. Nobody's trained on that yet. You will suddenly find yourself looking at a technology that nobody knows that you're getting trained on, and suddenly you become an expert in, and it just happens to sort of fall into your lap because that's the way IT works. It's a remarkable place to be. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited about the industry in general, not only because I see what's coming, but I lived it. I was able to make all of those things happen. If I can do it, anybody can do that. So you're doing the right things. You're getting the right kind of formal degree. You're learning the right kind of certifications and skills, both A+ and Security+. Both of those are good. You might even want to look to more specifically of what employers in your area might be putting in their job postings. That might help you decide a little bit better what direction you might want to go in the future. But I think you're doing all the right things. Your key now is to get that degree, get those certifications, find those jobs, get in the door, and start earning a way up and out to the next levels of IT, and you're going to be just fine.
I appreciate that. And also, I definitely appreciate your videos because they're the ones that have helped me to study because, like trying to read from the book is one thing, but having those explanations, the way you break it down as to the functions of some elements in terms of the A+ 001, like that was really helpful. It helped me understand not just the topics, but as well as functionality as well. So that's all that I have for you today.
I appreciate the call, and thank you for those kind words. And keep doing what you're doing. You're heading the right direction, Mohammed. Best of luck.
I appreciate it.
It's one of those things that I think it's hard to go wrong in IT. Once you get in the door, often in your career, if you ever look at any other type of industry, there's usually a pretty solid rail that you move along to move from here, and then you move up to a junior role, and then you move to the senior role, and then you move into management. And it's like a very specific rail you have to follow. And if you don't follow that rail, there's nowhere else to go. But in IT, it's a broad set of decisions you get to make. In fact, in your career, there will be times when you're ready to make a move and you're like, I could go here or I could go here. Both of those things are very different responsibilities, very different jobs with different skill sets that I have to be able to use, and you get to make that decision. What a great position to be in. We often think at the time, this is a horrible thing I have to do and I have to decide between these two things. In reality, what a great position to be in. What a great industry that allows you that particular set of options. It's hard to find that in other industries. It really, really is. This is really, really key in making it work out that way. Well, David in the chat room asks, what are my thoughts on Network Plus versus CCNA? Well, when this is over, rewind back about 10 minutes, and you'll be able to know my opinions on that. I went through the whole thing. You must have missed that part of it. But we did go through a little bit of that. It's a commonly asked question, too, with understanding the differences between those. There's a place for both and working through all of those. That's true. If you work in hardware, I don't know ACE hardware is exactly, but maybe you could just not say that part. You worked in hardware. It had a lot to do with hedging and digging. You'd be surprised, though, how much hardware you will be working with when you work in IT. You should always have that good drill if you're putting things in a rack. It's always going to help you. Back to the phone calls. 559 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Ramon Delgado. I'm calling you from Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Well, thanks for calling.
How are you doing today?
Appreciate that. What can we do for you?
Hi, so I'm currently preparing myself to take my IT test, or the 1001 next week on Wednesday. And I was just calling to get a little bit more of kind of verification that I did it right, of what I did to prepare myself. So I kind of found out a little bit late about your videos. I started using this paid course called Test Out, which basically it's a course, but then it also gives you a virtualization of Windows. So it kind of walks you through what you're supposed to be doing. But I use that as a resource. So I don't know if you were familiar with it, if I did the right thing. I kind of go through your videos and I seem to understand the content more through your videos than I kind of did through Test Out. But I appreciate that Test Out did the virtualization and kind of the walkthrough. So I don't know if you were familiar with it.
A little bit. I don't spend a lot of time. I just don't have a lot of time to look at all of the other options out there, but I have heard of them before. So I at least have some familiarity.
Okay, awesome. And just kind of, it's going to be, I want to go into network engineering.
Great.
And you just kind of talked about it. Go back 10 minutes. I was about to ask you if the way to attack the network engineering, because a lot of the job postings that I look at are going to be requiring your CCNA or your Network Plus. It's not really required that you have both.
Okay.
But in terms of I guess quality in the content, would you go with a CCNA or a Networking Plus?
It's almost like if you know you're going to get into networking, you know networking is what you want to do. You want to manage the switches. You want to understand the routing. You want to kind of build the foundation for what even may eventually be a security role. Then you need to become an expert in networking. And a lot of people start there so that they can use those skills to do something relating to security. I mentioned leveling up. That's a good example. A lot of people who are in IT security right now were originally experts in networking because you do so much networking on the IT security side. And if you're already looking at job postings and they even say you could have Network Plus or you could have CCNA, that should be your cue to think, okay, I could go either way with this, and getting a CCNA doesn't look bad to this employer. They're not looking at this as me being overqualified. They're looking at this as me being properly qualified for this job. Now, as I mentioned earlier, CCNA is not an entry-level position. So if you're just starting out in this industry and you have no idea what the difference is between a switch and a router, maybe Network Plus is a better place to start as a primer. Maybe that gets you the understanding of the technologies. You're becoming more familiar with what a frame is and what a packet is and what routers do, and the terms we often use to be able to encapsulate and de-encapsulate and wide area network technologies, and all of these terms and acronyms that we use. You would become familiar with that with Network Plus. Moving into CCNA from there is a step up. It's certainly a more difficult certification, but now you've already understood the underlying foundation of words, the terms, the nomenclature of the CCNA, and now you can start focusing on, what do I do at the command line of this switch? How do I configure this router to be able to properly dynamically route or act as a router on a stick, or configure the NTP, or recover it from a password that we don't remember? Those are things that you have to be able to do for the CCNA. But they're all command line. You're sitting there typing the whole time. CCNA is a typing test, not the test itself, but you learning the CCNA topics is a lot of typing at the command line and understanding those commands. So that's why I often tell people, if you're just starting off, maybe Network Plus is a good place to start. It's certainly a relatively easy. It's designed to be entry level. It's designed to ease you into the technologies. But I also have a lot of people that skip over Network Plus. They go straight to CCNA. Just recognize that if you don't have that foundational knowledge, you're going to need to spend a little bit more time on the CCNA than other people might, because you're really starting from ground zero and you're going to have to learn that foundational piece as you go along. It's not insurmountable. It's just some extra time that you're going to have to allocate to that. And you may find and get frustrated that this is going very slow. I'm having to spend a lot of so I thought I'd be working on switches and routers. I'm sitting here learning about how a switch works and how a router works instead of actually doing the configurations. Well, because you have to learn that first. You have to at least begin somewhere with those pieces. So I think if you wanted to jump right into CCNA knowing that in the future you wanted to do something in networking, that's perfectly reasonable. Just understand you're going to have to spend a little bit more time on the fundamentals as you go through that process.
Awesome. And then in regards to, like, let's say security, is it a good base to go A+ network and then lead into security? Is having that networking, how would you say, I guess, base of knowledge good to lead into security?
Certainly, CompTIA recommends that particular path for that particular reason. What you often find, though, is a lot of the entry-level positions that are outside the scope of the U.S. federal government don't really talk a lot about Security Plus. They're really focused on A+, and in some cases, Network Plus. If you get into the world of IT and you want to become a security professional, I worked as a systems engineer for a next-generation firewall company for about 7 years. And I moved into the security role before that, I worked in a security role with a security company, Network Associates. So we were already doing switching and routing and firewalls and IPS and antivirus and a lot of the security technologies. But you had to have a basic foundational understanding of networking just to be able to understand how to install the firewall, how to configure it as a layer 3 device, how to set up the dynamic routing. What if you needed to route with one routing protocol on the outside and a different routing protocol on the inside? Well, we need to do some type of change and configuration of the device to be able to make that change to the different routing protocols. What about the routing redistribution? So what if you wanted to set up a VPN, an IPsec VPN between two sites? Does your firewall work with policies to determine what data goes across the VPN, or is it a route-based VPN? And you have to know what the differences are. And if it is there natting going on across that link? So all of these security technologies I just mentioned, most of those challenges are networking challenges. They're understanding how to NAT properly, what the difference between policy-based versus route-based, understanding how to configure the dynamic routing protocols, how to do the route redistributions, how to set up the IP addresses and the subnet masks. We haven't even done the security part yet. We're just trying to get the box plugged in. That's why I always tell people, get a knowledge of networking, get an expertise knowledge of networking. That's going to allow you to roll right into security. So the networking part of security will be easy for you. You can focus then on understanding the security overlay to all of those pieces. So that's why I tell people all the time, learn the network, learn the network, learn the network. It's the foundation of almost everything in IT, but especially the foundation if you ever want to do anything on the IT security side.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I just want to thank you for all the content that you put out. It's been very helpful throughout this whole journey of trying to study and prepare myself for that IT certification test next week. So I've been using your exam hack book and your practice test, and I just wanted to know that it's all been very helpful to kind of just see where I'm at and see where I need to focus more time on. So thank you so much for your time.
That's great to hear. Best of luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's something I think that we often think in IT that and I see this a lot where people say, I just want to start in security. I just want to start on the security side. But I just listed 4 or 5 things that are a very small part of IT security, and you have to have a very solid knowledge of this. How do you plug in 2 firewalls in an active, they're both active at the same time? How do you configure those firewalls so that they're able to stop flows properly or allow flows properly? How do you configure that in an environment with redundant switches on the inside, and maybe on the other side of the firewalls are redundant routers? There's all these different challenges. CCNA is really the first step. After that, you have to learn enough about the technologies to be able to start designing the networks, to be able to answer the advantages and disadvantages of doing it one way or another. ultimately you will get there. Ultimately, you'll learn all of these. It seems insurmountable right now, but ultimately you will get there where someone will say, I want to install something like this. How can I do that? Well, we can do it like this, or we can do it like this. Here's the advantages of doing it this way. Here's the advantages of doing it the other way. And you get to have people have a conversation, because it's often never one way. There's often nuances and things you can modify in the design to fit best with what somebody's trying to do. But you need to understand everything about the foundation if you ever want to be able to do that on the top of this. Before we go back to the phones, thank you in the chat room for the €5 donation. Thanks. Your videos passed my A+ and Network Plus. Keep up the great work. Greetings from Germany, Marco. Thank you, Marco, for the €5 donation as well. And congratulations on your A+ and Network Plus exams. It's been a good year to, I think, work on our certifications. So what a great opportunity to have that there. And I'm more than happy that you were able to take advantage of some of the things we provide as well. Congratulations on that. Back to the phones. Let's go back to the 757 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon. My name is Ed. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you great.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, I was the person that called a little bit earlier, and the moment that the phone beeped, my mind just went to a complete blank, and I forgot what I was going to ask.
No worries. We got you here now.
First of all, I'm going to be part of the praise group, and basically thank you for all the effort and time that you've put in towards providing the material that we basically use to prepare better for
thank you.
The IT field. Yeah, you've done an immense job. I've tried a different source to help prepare for taking the exams, and for some reason the material just I didn't grasp it, and there was a lot of material in there that you had mentioned may not be part of the examination, but was already mentioned. And I kind of gave up on that. And then your content was repeatedly mentioned through forums and social media groups. So I figured I'd give it a shot.
We appreciate that.
Lo and behold, that material's sticking.
That's why there's options out there.
Working.
Find the one that works for you, and you got something you can go with. That's great to hear.
Yep, definitely. The question that I have is basically it's study related. Hopefully this question helps a lot of other people that may be curious and might be facing the same type of situation. As far as studying, what is the best advice that you can give to retain the material as good as possible? It's not just it really isn't retaining, it's just the best way to learn it.
This is a question that's a little bit different depending on who you talk to, because everybody learns a little bit differently. Everybody has a little bit different style. Some people prefer writing down everything they see. Some people don't. Some people prefer not writing and seeing before they ever start picking up a pen or a pencil and writing anything down or typing their notes in. It's very different. But for me, I'll give you the way I learn, and you can take that for whatever it's worth, I guess, but I'll give you my perspective anyway, is I do well with a combination of a lot of different things. Although I make a lot of videos, there's thousands of videos out on our YouTube channel. I focus on creating my YouTube videos as a complete course when I start building these things out. And I watch a lot of videos on how to do things. So I appreciate having that accessible to me. But I also really rely on books. I pull a lot out of books because a book is going to be able to provide you with content in a different way. It's able to give you a much more detailed view of content because reading or pulling something out of a book, you're able to put a lot more detail in a book in a much smaller place than you ever could do with a video. A video is one to provide more demonstration, more stories, more explanation of the things that you're doing. And I think a book and a video work very well together. But the one thing that always seems to work best for me is just the hands-on. It's taking the concept that's being talked about and being able to perform that on my system. So for example, on the A+, when they talk about what's in a BIOS, I like to bring up a BIOS and look at it myself and go through changing the screens and look to see what the options are. When it talks about running the networking commands and understanding how ping works and understanding how traceroute works and using the net commands in Windows, I like to run those myself. Let me do my own pings. Wow, look at all this stuff that came up. What does all this output mean? It often leads me into doing additional studies and additional Google searches to really pull out every little thing on the screen so I really understand it. Same thing with traceroute, same thing with the Windows net commands, and trying to get it to do something that would help me remember that later. I think there's something about typing it on a keyboard, seeing it on the screen that fires different synapses in my brain that helps me remember it better later, so that when I get a question about traceroute, I remember when I ran my traceroute, what I did with it, and I'm able to apply that back to the particular situation I'm on there. I think that, and finally, of course, the practice exams and having some type of validation that you really did remember it is the ultimate check, so that I've gone through the books and the videos and the hands-on, but did I really remember it? And do I really understand the style of question that's going to be presented to me on the exam? Let's go see if I can really do this the right way. So you find some good Q&A and you go through the Q&A. And I think those things together, it's not any one thing. It's sort of a combination of different things thrown together. And I think it's kind of a philosophy as well. A lot of people go into certifications with the idea that they just want to run through it, learn the bare minimums, try to figure it out as quickly as possible, take the exam, and just hopefully they squeak through it. But I think if you go into IT certifications with the perspective that there is some valuable information in this certification, information that probably even goes outside the scope of what I'm planning to do on my day-to-day job, but it's knowledge that I'll be able to take with me the rest of my career if I can just learn it now. That's some valuable stuff. There's been plenty of certifications I've taken that when I took my cert, I wasn't able to use that. But I found that a year or two later, I was put into a new role where suddenly all of these things that I learned 2 years ago now became incredibly important. I was able to pull back some of that knowledge. So if you go into it with the philosophy of let's really learn everything there is to learn about this, I'm going to be able to use it, if not now, be able to use this in the future. I think that's, in some cases, a more healthy way to go about your certifications than perhaps just rushing through it, learning the bare minimums, and hoping you do well on the exam.
Absolutely true. I agree 100% about that. I don't want that to be a case where it's about, rushing to memorize the material in order to take to get a pass the score on the exam. It's studying to keep in mind that it's going to come in use, because that's really what it's about.
I think there have been times in the past, especially with A+, where some of the things on the A+ certification perhaps weren't as well scoped out as they could have been, that perhaps there were technologies on it that people did not really see a lot of these days. But I think the most recent iterations of A+ have been pretty spot on. I can walk into any data center of any decent size and find all of the technologies that are listed in the A+ exam objectives almost 100%. So with that, knowing that you're going to run into these eventually, why wouldn't you spend time learning them? It just makes sense.
Definitely. You actually answered two other questions in the process of mentioning all that information.
I must have known.
Yeah, you must have had the ability to see that later on. Highly valuable information. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, eventually, very, very soon, probably even more than likely, even today, you'll probably see my name pop up, placing an order on some of that material that's on your page. I appreciate that. I do now know that, I'm going to need that material. I've been going through the videos. I'm almost done with the 1001, heading into 1002, but I just have a feeling that I'm going to need more than just that to really prepare.
That's fantastic. Best luck with your studies. It sounds like you've got the right idea of what to do with the certifications and where to go from here. I wish you the best of luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It's always a challenge, and I get sometimes frustrated when I read things online, and you've probably seen it too, where you read online that what good is this certification? This is a waste of time. You should really be getting, I say, you should really be getting your CCNA. And I find it remarkable. Why the CCNA? Why aren't you starting with the CCIE? Why are you starting in the help desk? You should be starting as the CEO. It's almost like they forget that there's a foundational knowledge you need to be able to start in IT and then move up with these skills through the years. And sometimes I just don't know what people are thinking along those lines, as if they never, ever had to learn anything entry level whenever they're doing something. Of course, you need to know the entry level. And the better you are at that, the better foundation you create, the better it is to certainly start at that point and build on it. Makes sense to me. Let's go back to the phones, the 347 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Are you
Hello?
there? Hi, caller.
Hello? Oh, you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, hi. So I do have a question, and I do love your videos, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a few questions about, like, the career. So I have the A+ and Net+, and I go to college full time. I got the certification before going to college.
Nice.
And yeah, and once I got the certification, I automatically landed a help desk job, a part-time role in New York City, actually. 'Cause
Great.
I live in New York City, and I'm wondering because I've been in the help desk job for like 3 years because it's like, I guess kind of because of convenience, really.
Sure.
Like, it's part-time, and the pay is pretty good for a part-time.
Right.
And since it's next to my college too, that's why it was easier, travel and all that. But now I'm kind of thinking, I'm not sure what to really do in a sense, like with my career right now. Like, I got my associates already, and I'm working towards my bachelor's. And I kind of like spiraled down, like I sort of lost like some of my IT knowledge because I think I've been stuck in this job for a while. And I haven't really been using my networking skills as much versus my computer skills. So I'm not sure what to really do, like where to like go, like study more, or like what to focus on. I'm kind of like confused with my career choices right now.
There are many people listening to your particular situation right now and screaming into their monitors that you're doing exactly the right things. You are in a very good position right now with the things that you're working on. The fact that you already had certifications prior to starting up your formal education, the fact that you've got a part-time job working on a help desk, that is practical experience that any employer will look at and say, okay, we don't have to start you at the bottom. We can start you at the next level up. And at the same time, you're working on getting that formal education, which is not only going to help you for your initial jobs, but will help you in the future if you ever decide to move up or even into management. That's pretty strong places to come from. Don't for a second worry that perhaps you're not doing enough networking, you're not doing enough security. I think that's perfectly healthy. I think you should be thinking that way. You should always be thinking about, I would love to be doing more networking. In fact, that you even have the idea that that's something that interests you is fantastic. That's what you should be doing. And in IT, we often think about that 3-year plan. We often joke amongst ourselves that we have a 3-year plan. We get into a job, we learn everything about that job, and by the time 3 years comes along, we should be moving to the next job. In some places, especially very busy environments, sometimes it's a lot shorter amount of time. I would think in a help desk, you should probably be in a help desk 9 months to a year, at which point you should probably be thinking about what's my next place going to be. It doesn't take long to get out of the help desk and make that happen. But you're in what a great place to be with already having practical industry experience. The job, as you mentioned, part-time job, you're in college. Your goal is to get your degree. The part-time job is there to maybe give you some spending money, maybe support some of the things you're doing, pay the rent a little bit. But you're also, what a great job you got. You're not working at a fast food. You're not working as somebody. I worked in a video rental store. Although in college I was able to work in operations in my computer center with mainframes. That I think that's that is one of the best things you can have on your resume is some practical industry experience along those lines. I get that it's help desk. You've been in it 3 years. Of course, it's going to seem a bit rote. You're going to have yet another password reset, yet another one where somebody doesn't know how to do a mail merge. I get it. How much remote desktop can one person stand in a lifetime? I get it. I totally get it. Yeah. But we all have to kind of start at that level. And the fact that you've got that now that you can rely on and keep doing that in your while you're taking your other job, I say another job, but you're getting that degree. It is another job. While you're working on that degree, I think you've got a nice setup here. Don't discount it. Yeah, it sounded to me like you were discounting it a little bit. Don't discount it. You're in a good position. Use that while you can to be able to hone the skills you have. If you have the opportunity to, on the weekends, I'm sure the company you work with has a networking team. They have a server team. They have a security team.
I work for like a nonprofit, and I'm kind of like the only one kind of running most of the things.
Okay.
And I do have like an IT boss. He does set up the network, but it's like he's more of a hired person, and it's just like I'm kind of running most of the other things.
Well, this is really a good position to be in. Although you don't have the ability to go to separate teams within your company and maybe spend time with them on the weekend or bigger projects they may be working on, you might be able to work with your boss a little bit and say, I know we're putting in a new switch over in this new building. Can I watch you do that? Can I just stand over your shoulder and see what it really takes to put this switch in, what configurations you would set up? How do you plan it out? Maybe you can whiteboard it for me. There's places where you can start learning a little more about those different parts of IT without actually being in those jobs at the moment. And if anybody else is in a help desk, trust me, the networking team loves to have some extra hands and people on board to help work with these things. There will be a time when they have to roll out a whole new conference center, or they have to build out a new training room, or they need to bring in a bunch of servers or move them across town. You should be volunteering for those things. It's a good chance to meet the people that are doing that, and it's a good chance to learn some of the things that they're doing.
Got you. Okay, that's a really good idea. So now my next question would be like going to a next job, or like, since I can't really do full time right now, like I still live with my parents and stuff. I'm kind of young. Like I was thinking of looking for more part-time IT jobs, but it's like most of the part-time ones tend to be intern level, and I think I'll probably get paid less than the amount I get now, and I'm not sure, maybe like even lesser responsibility. I don't know what the case is, but I mean, do you think I should like apply for maybe more like intern jobs or like some other places where it's more part-time?
I think if you're working on a formal degree right now, that should be your focus. I think that's what you need to get through first. That's the thing you need to get in your pocket. I think you've got everything else sort of set up on with your part-time job now. They're paying you pretty well. There may not be a huge amount of technical knowledge that you're going to have to keep working on. You may have hit a point where you're pretty familiar with everything you're doing. You feel like you're not learning anything yet. But don't worry about that now. You've got a whole career ahead of you and plenty of time. I know people always say that, like you've got your whole lifetime ahead of you to work on those things. But as far as your career is concerned, especially in IT, that's really true. You can move up very quickly in IT very fast just by applying yourself, learning these technologies, and becoming very knowledgeable in these niches. So I wouldn't worry so much about, are you doing it fast enough? Are you getting the job that you need right now? Should you really be looking at a bigger company? Should you be trying to get a different help desk or a different part-time? Don't worry about that right now. Go get your 4-year degree, get everything you need, get it all in your pocket, and then it will be time to start moving up, start leveling up and moving up those ranks. You'll have no problem doing it with the foundational knowledge that you've already created while you've been in school.
Gotcha. Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, because like I'm 22 and like I feel like the pandemic just sort of changed a whole bunch of things, and it's like I'm going to spiral like, okay, what should I be doing next, or like what should be my next step? Kind of getting worried, like what if there's not enough time, or what if I'm getting delayed with my career, or whatever the case is. It's a lot on my mind.
I get it.
Like needing a little guidance about that.
I was exactly the same way in college, working on my management degree. I was working part-time in a computing center. I was learning about these networking technologies and the mainframes and how the cryogenerators worked and all of the systems around it. I was dying to just keep going, to run with it. I was on fire with this. And I think that fire is important. And I think that drive is going to move you up in the ranks of IT very quickly. But you got to build the foundation first. Get that degree, get everything there, because you're going to have a life. You're going to have a family, you're going to have a wife, you're going to have a significant other, there's children involved, there's the rest of the family. Now we can't move because we've got kids in school. Now they are in high school. It happens very quickly. And it starts to begin limiting the decisions that you make. You have to start making very narrowly focused decisions. Right now, your decisions are very wide. Focus on getting the foundational stuff in your pocket that's going to move you throughout your career for the rest of your career. And that 4-year degree and the foundational knowledge that you get there is what's going to be something you'll be able to rest on. But you need to get it in your pocket first. At that point, you're going to have no problem moving up. You've got the drive, you've got the want, you've got the interest. It's now just a matter of sort of building the nest. And at that point, you'll be able to fly anywhere you want.
Gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I guess my last finalist question. So my professor, they recommended me that I should learn coding, and I'm really just not good at coding. And so the major I'm in is computer information system, and I went with the networking track instead, because since I kind of already went with the whole certification route. But is there, I guess, should I be learning more coding or something? Like if I want to get into like security fields, or I don't know, because when it comes to routing and stuff, I feel like command lines are a little more easier than actually learning how to code, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess the question I have is, when they say you need to learn coding, what do they mean? That's a very broad term, coding. Do they have something specific that they mentioned?
Yeah, like Python and automation, things like that.
Okay. I can get on board with that. The reason I mention that, sometimes when especially people who are academic say coding, they're talking about C++, Java, learning some type of formalized programming language, learning Swift, building apps on a mobile device, building apps on the web. And generally speaking, I don't consider that to be a purview of IT, because in IT, we don't really do programming, which is why coding is sort of a generic term. It really doesn't mean anything. If I had to, this is in my video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. If you had to put these things on a Venn diagram, the world of computer science is the world of designing applications and designing hardware and building the software and hardware systems to be able to support those. Information technology, or IT, makes sure that all of those systems are working, implements them, puts them in the network, maintains the security of those devices, makes sure that those devices are able to operate properly, and it's a completely different field of work. Notice that those two diagrams, those two circles of computer science and information technology barely connect with each other. So when somebody comes to me and says, they said I need to learn how to program, I'm like, okay, what do they mean by that? Because creating an app, building an app, is something you will never do in IT. You should never say never, except you would never do that in IT. That's not IT at all. That's computer science. But when you get into automation, scripting, being able to orchestrate, that is absolutely knowledge that you should have in the world of IT. It is being able to understand. In fact, I tell people, pick one of these, pick Python or PowerShell, go learn everything you can about one of those. If you're Windowsy, go learn the PowerShell. If you're more into the cloud and networking, maybe Python, but you really can't go wrong. Both of those are really good. Learn those technologies. Once you learn one, you will be able to use that and apply it to other types of scripting. So it's really the foundational knowledge of how do I make this scripting, orchestration, automation world work for me? And Python right now is a fantastic way to do it. Whoever your instructor said to you to go learn Python was spot on. They were absolutely correct. You want to learn something new. You want to push yourself. You want to have something in your pocket that you can bring into an employer and say, I'm knowledgeable in this. I can really make your network work really well. Python's a great way to do it.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, because I was just a little like stuck on how my life is, and it's just like kind of helping clarify a little bit about that. Appreciate it, man.
You're in a good spot. Keep doing what you're doing. Whatever that is you're doing, keep doing that.
Okay, got you. Yeah, because I've used your videos and everything when I was studying for the A+ and the Plus like 3 years ago, and I just looked at the video today. I'm like, oh crap! Like you're going loud. So let me ask you some questions about like my career and stuff. But appreciate it, man. Appreciate all your help that you've been doing, and appreciate for helping me now.
Best of luck.
But yeah, thanks.
Have a good one. That's fantastic. I think whenever we start looking at what can we do to do more in this industry, there are always things we can work on. There are always skills that we can use, and there's plenty to pull from. The challenge we often have is, which one do I go with? How do I know which one to choose? And that's often the harder part. But just ask me. I'll give you my opinion anyway, and what I see people doing with these technologies. But it's one where I often worry, because I do see, if you're not in the industry, you've never worked in IT before, in this world that we live in, people often equate coding, building applications, with a knowledge of computers. Very often, there is no connection between learning how to program applications and knowledge of computers. There's often a huge gap there. As many people have had to troubleshoot bad applications can attest. Knowing how to focus your efforts and learn the skills that will help you the most becomes almost as important as learning the actual skills. Let's go back to the phones. 518 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having me, Professor.
Thank you for calling.
My name's Avi. I'm from Schenectady, New York.
Hi, Avi.
Yes, sir. So I have a bachelor's in IT, but I never put it to use because I moved from one area to the next. I moved out from New York City out to the upstate New York wilderness. And I found a job at the New York Lottery, and I'm doing customer service work, but I'm pursuing this A+ certification. And I'm actually interested in two things. I'm interested in cybersecurity, but I also hear a lot about AWS. And, I'm just trying to get my big break in IT, my foot in the door. So I got to go with the A+ first. Do you have any advice on how to run up to the career pathways in the AWS and cybersecurity?
There's a number of different ways. The one thing that's nice about information technology in general, and we spoke about this earlier, is there is no single path to get you from point A to point E or F. Yeah, there's multiple ways to get there. You could either take this road or that road or the other road. And often it's not, neither one of those is better or worse than the other. They're just different ways to get there. And it often has a dependence on where we happen to live, what we're doing in our lives, the opportunities that happen to be available in our current organization. You never know where these opportunities are going to come from. Your particular organization, the New York Lottery, there are technology people in that organization you may be able to network with. Certainly, there is a big cybersecurity aspect to the things that are happening within your organization that you may not even see because of the department you happen to work in. But you could ask the people who work there that you may see or you may have knowledge of, or you could just send an email to and say, I'm really interested in doing this. Maybe ask them the same thing you asked me. What could I do within the certifications or things that I'm working on that would qualify me to move into the networking team, the security team, or do something in IT within our company? And maybe they can get back with you and talk with you about some of those things, whether that would make you move up within your current company or whether you move to a different company and make that happen. I think another place to gather some of these details, we often don't think about it, but it's really a wealth of information, are the job postings that are out there now, even if you're not looking for a job right now. But it's a great place to go to see what are other companies looking for. What job openings do they happen to have? And secondly, for those job openings, what are they asking for? Are any of them asking for AWS? Are any of them asking for Azure? Are they doing more with other networking technologies that I should probably be focusing on? Did they even mention Python? Those are the things that should prompt you to what you would want to do. You had mentioned wanting to maybe get more knowledge in cloud-based technologies, AWS specifically. Amazon has some fantastic certifications available that would be perfect to step through if you wanted to learn more about that. Perhaps even stronger is the Microsoft side, where their Azure certifications are extensive. They rolled out tons of those that go across many different cloud-based technologies. There's plenty of places to go, and I think certifications is a good way to have a structured focus on understanding those technologies. And then at the end of it, you could earn a cert that you could put on your resume that you could show someone else when you're ready to get that next job. So it's almost a twofer where you are learning it, you're getting really familiar with the technology, and then you have something now that you can use as a credential when you go to look for those jobs. So those are the things you can work on, at least the opportunities that you could go with. And I think you can't go wrong in either one of those.
Oh, well, thank you so much, because those are great ideas about asking my coworkers about how to move up and, looking through those job openings. But I'm wondering, I'm pushing 35 now, and is that too late to break IT?
One great thing about the computers is they have no idea how old you are. Someone like me, I'm also pushing 35, and one of the challenges that you run into isn't really on the computer side of things. It's really on the people side of things. And there's been conversations about this most recently on Reddit about ageism and the challenges with getting an entry-level tech job for someone who is not just out of college. You've sort of done some things in your life to be able to work through those. And I mentioned this in my video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. I have 4 elements that I really think are essential for the best possible job that you could, or best possible opportunity that you could have in a job without having any experience in IT. And I talk about the certifications, I talk about the formal education, I talk about having some type of hands-on or at least some practical experience with these technologies. But it's that 4th one that perhaps becomes more important for people like you and me, which is, do I know somebody who works there? Do I know somebody who works in technology there? And the people networking part of this becomes incredibly important. Throughout my career in IT, I've probably had, I would say about 15 to 20 different jobs. I'm talking about starting as a technology specialist 1 to technology specialist 2 to technology specialist 3. Those are different jobs that I've gone through. Some of the jobs I moved up within the existing company that I was at. Some of the jobs I moved to a different company. But I went through a lot of different jobs in IT to be able to work through those things. One of the things that I found to be important, in my first job, I knew nobody who worked there. I'm really not even sure today why they hired me, but they saw something and said, well, we could hire that guy to do this grunt job of being a field person and being able to work through it. The part that helped me in every other job in IT that I got after that, I knew someone who worked there. And it's not like you know them at a personal level. You know where their kids go to school. You spend time with them on the weekend. You know them professionally. They're part of your LinkedIn. You see them at trade shows. You see them at the Cisco user group meeting. You've run into them in different places, and you know who they are, and you have these conversations. That really helps, because when you're in a room with someone who's hiring you or going through the interview process, you go, oh yeah, I know Bob in IT. We talked about this job and we talked about the projects you have going on, and here's why I think this would be a good fit for me. and how I think I could be a good fit for you. That just knowing somebody who works there opens doors. They often have that saying that it's not what you know, but who you know. And that certainly is an important part of this. It's not only what you know, it's also who you know, because that has certainly opened doors for me. And we often don't think enough about that being valuable. And as you get older in our industry, knowing more and more people becomes incredibly important. You should already be working on your LinkedIn. You should already be connecting with people. You should already be meeting people and getting them in that circle that you have there so that you can reach out to them if you have a question. Hey, everybody, I'm trying to do this. Do you know anybody hiring a good networking person? Or you can touch base with people directly, or at least constantly stay in touch with what they're doing. I think that discounts a lot of the problems we see with hiring people of a certain age in our industry. And I think if you wanted to just have a better grouping of people that you can converse with, it's good to have that as part of whether it's your LinkedIn or some other method of keeping track and networking with them professionally. It's an important part of what you do. I know we often say in IT, we're just a bunch of computer people. We don't like to talk to other people. But that's actually not true at all. It's like any other industry. It's like any other grouping of people. It's like any other set of humans. We like to communicate with other humans and see what they're doing. So this is where you can kind of get rid of the worries of ageism or the worries that somebody wouldn't want to hire you because of your age. And you already know people that work there. They would love to hire you. They already know you. They've already worked with you in the past. They already know you from the Cisco user group or whatever it happens to be. But you have to build that foundation. You have to build that network now. You can't do it when you're ready to get a job. It already needs to be in place, and it needs to be something you nurture throughout your entire career. We're all wanting to stay connected with each other, and everybody who's on my LinkedIn, some of you that are watching, you've sent me a LinkedIn request, and you'll notice that I haven't responded to that. I only add people to my LinkedIn that I have worked with or that I have had professional relationships with, so that if I need to ask questions of people, I'm asking questions of people that know me and I know them. And I think that becomes a much more valuable set of goals for my LinkedIn. That's what I'm trying to do with LinkedIn, is having a well-curated, a well-established network team of people that I know. It's not like Facebook where I'm trying to get a bunch of likes. This is very, very different, and you need to work with it in a different way. And that may be a good way to kind of get that next job, not having to worry about the age part of it.
Oh, yeah, definitely, sir. Are you going to do anything in cloud in terms of like a cloud bundle or something like that in the future?
Maybe the cloud piece of it, I want to do a lot of different courses. I have a huge list of courses. I probably have 20 things that I've written down that I would love to be able to do. My problem is just physics. It's just I'm one person trying to get through all of these courses and being able to do them. All of these courses we've been working on, A+, Network+, Security+, those all have cloud-based technologies inside of them. I recognize they are not cloud certs, but even then I'm seeing more cloud-based things happening. Currently, we're in the process of updating Network+. After that, A+ will need to be updated. It's about time for that to cycle through. But right after that will be an opportunity for something. And I haven't decided specifically on what that will be, but it's down to kind of the top 3 or 4. Cloud is part of that. Which cloud it is, I don't know yet. There's some Google stuff. There's Amazon stuff. There is certainly the Microsoft. Those are big players in that. Or do I go outside the scope of that? Maybe we'll do Cisco. Maybe we'll do VMware. Maybe we go well outside the scope and do Palo Alto Networks. I don't know yet. I would love to be able to do more cloud, but it's not something that's going to happen next week. It's probably more like next year, but it's certainly in the back of my mind.
Wow, cool. I ordered the A+ bundle, and I got to tell you, the product is just superb. I just really do appreciate all the videos that you made for us, and all of the information, the practice exams. They're pretty much spot on, so I just appreciate the time you spend educating us here at ProfessorMesser.com. And thank you for all that you do for us.
I appreciate that. Thank you for even saying that. I spend a lot of time, for those of you that don't know, we don't outsource this stuff. Everything that you read, all of the questions that you see in my books, all of the course notes that you see in all the videos are content that I have written. We have a specific goal to create the highest quality materials that are very focused on you just getting that certification. And that's where we're going to continue to have that focus. And it's great to get that kind of feedback because it lets me know, okay, we're doing the right thing. So thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's a wealth of information. Every product is really, really to the T.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for your support of those, and best of luck with everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much. You have a great day now.
You too. That's always good to hear. For those of you that don't know about this, there's not a lab full of people here. For those of you that have kind of been watching, it's just me and a computer for the most part in the room. I've got Lori, my marketing manager, and it's kind of it. We're sort of putting the whole thing together based on those side of things. So it's good to know that some of the things that we're creating really are having the right impact. I want to build out training materials that I would want to use if I went through this process. And there's not a lot of room to really cut corners. I don't want to cut corners. I don't want to have something that's just good enough. I want to have something that you can use to really pass that certification. Our goal is for you to get a job or get a better job. And the only way you're going to do that is if you have the best quality materials possible. Let's go back to the phone calls you've been holding for so long. Thank you, caller 931 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? I hear myself. I'm on speaker.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, yes, I turned it off.
Thank you.
My name's Alex. I'm from Tennessee. It's really good to talk to you, Mr. Messer.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for calling.
So my question would be, I'm currently studying for the Linux Plus exam.
Great.
And I've been a user for Linux for maybe 4 months now, and I have a pretty good understanding of like the core concepts.
Great.
And so I got the book, and I've been reading through it, and I realized that it's very esoteric. Like it's not a lot of things that the normal user would implement.
Right.
And I've been looking for a lot of study material, and it seems that all of it is aimed towards the LPIC, I believe. And it's even old.
Right.
So I was just wondering, what would you recommend? Would you recommend maybe just downloading the exam objectives and just trying to drill those with maybe made-up practice exams in my head, or?
I think at a minimum, for everyone listening, regardless of what certification you're working on through CompTIA, always get the exam objectives in your pocket. It should be the first thing you grab, because I don't think a lot of people realize just how extensive the exam objectives are. They are a bullet by bullet breakdown of everything you need to know to pass the exam. They're not some broad, generalized listing of objectives. They are a very specific list of objectives, and CompTIA probably is the only organization in IT that gives you this level of detail. LPI used to, or I guess they still might on their side for their certification, but CompTIA certainly does a much better job than Microsoft or Cisco or VMware or any of the folks on that side. It is a wealth of information. You should absolutely grab that. But your point to the LPI thing, for those of you not familiar, this latest iteration of Linux Plus is a wholly owned creation of CompTIA. Prior to this version, there has been a partnership between CompTIA and an organization called LPI. LPI is one that has had for a very long time Linux certifications, and you can still go to LPI and get a Linux certification if you would like. Back when CompTIA was looking at getting into Linux Plus, they partnered with LPI, effectively kind of took their exam objectives and created what CompTIA calls Linux Plus by LPI. That's really was the full certification name. Powered by, I think they used Linux Plus powered by LPI or something along those lines. The LPI piece of it, though, they decided not to continue that partnership. LPI is now still off doing their thing, But now Linux Plus, what used to be 2 exams and was very focused on the LPI content, is now a single exam, and the content is solely written by CompTIA. So it has kind of a different approach, different perspective than the LPI side of things. But because of that, you can't use the LPI content to be able to really specifically learn for the current version of the Linux Plus exam. If you're planning to do anything with CompTIA, always study from materials that match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. And looking at some of the older LPI stuff is kind of going to take you off scope quite a bit, considering there are 2 LPI tests and only 1 CompTIA exam. Obviously, there are things that are dramatically different between the 2. So my recommendation with Linux Plus especially, you are already thinking, I need more hands-on. You're absolutely right. Get as much hands-on as possible. With Linux especially, and you can do so much in a VM with Linux, very little resources required. Everything is pretty much command line based for these exams anyway. That's a great place to go to be able to work out those nuances of the operating system without worrying that you're going to break something somewhere else. The other part of it is getting a book that is specific to the current version can actually help you quite a bit as you're going through that certification. If you didn't want to get a book and you just wanted to go through the exam objectives and use other materials and just pull it in bit by bit, that's not unreasonable. In a way, that's sort of how I build my certification courses now, is I use the exam objectives as my list, and I simply build into the videos everything that's listed in the exam objectives. You could effectively do a similar thing, just not making videos of it. You're instead doing hands-on with it, or you're learning more about that particular topic from what's available on Wikipedia and other sources on the internet. Perfectly reasonable and a little more disjointed and perhaps in some cases difficult to find content, but it's something you could do to make that happen. Definitely don't use some of the LPI though. Don't use some of that old content if you're planning to get the current version of Linux Plus. You've already seen there's problems there, Alex.
Yes, sir. And yes, I currently do have the, I believe it's the Ted Jordan Linux Plus book. And I've watched all of your Linux videos, but of course, even then, I mean, of course, it's great foundational knowledge, but it seems like there really is just a lack of content for this one specific certification. But
I'm no help along those lines. The few Linux Plus related videos I did are from, I don't know, 10 years ago. They're really, really old. Some of the content in those isn't exactly the most modern or accurate to go along with the exam. And I only did a handful. I did a few of those videos. I thought this would be a great course to do. And then because of a number of reasons, I realized, this is not a good course to do. And I decided to not do that course anymore. So you end up with 10 videos that certainly don't make up. I think I planned to do 110 videos. I did 10. And that was enough. And there's many reasons behind that I'm not going to go into, but you're right. There's a limited amount of content for Linux Plus, partly because it's relatively new on the CompTIA side, partly because the number of people asking for it is a relatively low number, and therefore there are fewer resources available, certainly as it compares to A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, but there are some out there you can go with. The fact that you have any books at all is great. Go with that. Use the objectives, and I think you'll be fine.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for the reassurance. It was great talking to you.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate the call. That's one where it's a balancing act for me. I'm a single person that is building out courses, so I have a very narrow focus on all the things I'm able to do. I would love to do a Linux course. I would love to do a cloud course. I would love to do a Cisco course. I would love to do a VMware course. I'd love to do all these, but it generally takes 3 to 4 months to put a course together. Well, that's a pretty big investment of time. That's all I do. I'm here every day from 8 in the morning until 10 at night. So if that's the case, and it takes me 4 months, that's a lot of work going into these things. So I have to pick and choose very carefully as to exactly what I'm going to do. So we'll figure it out. We'll make these things happen however they're going to happen. But that's one of the reasons why you don't see a ton of different and varied courses from me because I like to pick and choose exactly what we're going to do. Back to the phones. Thanks for holding for so long. 781 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm calling from Boston, Mass.
Hey, Rachel.
How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing great. Thanks for calling.
Great. Thank you. So I'm new to IT. This is going to be my second career. So I've only been studying for the Core 1 A+ test for about 2 months. And in looking at the 1001 objectives, it's daunting. I'm literally learning a new language. And so I wanted to know, first off, how in-depth do you need to get for each line item? So for instance, if I look at the wireless networking protocol, do I need to know, all of the frequencies, the max throughput, the bandwidth? Do I need to be able to compare them? I know 801, I know the numbers, and I know that a lot of the test requires memorization. And so I'm wondering, how do I tackle this? Because I'm supposed to be taking the test in 2 weeks, and I don't feel that I'm there yet. I can memorize, but I need to understand, and then I need to be able to problem solve. So how should I focus my time, and how in depth should I get on each line item in this set of, the objectives?
You're absolutely right. You could take just the wireless section of the exam objectives and create a year's worth of content from that. It is a broad set of technologies that has an extensive amount of things that you could work through. And it obviously for the A+, you don't have to know a year's worth of information to be able to make that happen. There's a very narrow scope of things you have to know. Fortunately, the exam objectives, if you read them and take them at a very basic, straightforward level, they provide you with all of the context you need for the most part. So in other words, if they are asking on the exam objectives and they list very specifically a set of specifications, then you need to know those specifications. If they do not specifically list out those specifications, you do not need to know them. I'll take an example of this from the 1001, which is a lot of people get wrapped up on this, and they send me notes saying, I'm spending so much time trying to learn all of the pins of memory, how many pins on a different kind of memory, and it's just ridiculous. It's taking me forever. My response to them is, why are you learning that? Why are you going through and learning how many pins are on memory? Where in the exam objectives does it ask you to memorize how many pins happen to be on a certain type of memory? And they look at their exam objectives and they say, it's not listed here. Like, okay, so why are you learning that? Stop that. Well, this other thing that I'm reading lists out all of these things. It tells me I need to know that. Like, well, you're not learning the book, you're learning the certification. And CompTIA says you don't need to know it, and it probably because it's a relatively worthless thing to know. So why are you going through the process of learning that? So that's why I always tell people, go back to the exam objectives and use them very literally as what you need to know for the exam. Now, there are times when they go a little bit outside the scope of the exam objectives, and they go a little bit outside, or at least they're a little vague in the objectives on things you need to learn. But fortunately, I've created these videos since the 600 series. So the 600, 700, 800, 900, now the 1000 series. So I've got, through the years, a pretty good understanding of what CompTIA is looking for, or in a way deciphering the hieroglyphics of the exam objectives into the practical things you need to know for the exam. So if you're ever in a situation where you're wondering, do I really need to know that? Pull up my video, list out everything that I have in my video, especially things that I write on the slide. I put them on the slide specifically when you're expected to know it. If it is not specifically written on a slide, then you do not need to know that for the most part. So you'll notice in none of my videos do I point out how many pins are on the memory, because they don't ask about that. There was a time when they used to ask a lot of details like that. They don't ask about that anymore. So that's what I would do. I would recommend using my videos as sort of a guideline. If you're ever wondering, do I really need to understand the nuances? Or here's a good one. Do I need to understand the modulation types used for each wireless standard? No. Is that listed anywhere in the exam objectives? It is not. So if it's not listed there, you do not need to know that. Now, there's other things they do expect you to know. They expect you to understand what standards use which frequency ranges. They expect you to understand what the maximum throughputs might be for those different standards. But I created a chart for that on my video on the wireless standards that shows the standard, the frequency they use, and the different pieces that the different throughputs for each one of those, and that's it. There's nothing else listed in that chart because you don't need to know anything else in that chart. Another example of that, since we're talking wireless, a lot of people will say, well, I need to understand the distances used for wireless. Well, there are no distances. It's wireless. What antenna are you using? How much power are you using? There's so many variables. There are no ways to determine a maximum or minimum distance for wireless, and you'll notice it's not listed in the exam objectives. So always go back to the objectives, always go back to the videos, get an understanding. And if you still can't figure out those pieces, there's a contact us link at the top of my website. Throw me an email, and I'll at least point you in a direction at the very least.
Perfect. And I love your videos. They are very helpful. So I will continue watching them. I had one other question.
Sure.
And so I heard you say that you like to tinker around the computer to figure your way around it. And I'm a hands-on person as well. So a lot of these questions say, given a scenario, select and configure or install, or I'm afraid that I'm going to break something if I open up my computer and look at the motherboard or the CPU. Should I be?
There are certainly things that you can break inside of your computer, and I've done a very good job of breaking things inside of my own computer before. So it's possible that you could break something inside there. And it's not 100% necessary that you do that either. Most people will even tell you, don't use it on your own computer. Go get a broken one off of eBay or somewhere locally where it's $20. They'll send you a broken computer, but it's complete. Except for a bad capacitor that's on the motherboard, they will send it to you, and they say you use it for parts. Well, that's perfect. You can take it apart. You don't have to worry about it breaking. You can see back behind me. There's a motherboard behind me. I pulled it out. That's what I used whenever I showed people what's on a motherboard. That's an old, I forget exactly which motherboard that is I have back there. But that's a good example of one that I know the system will never be used again. I don't have to worry about breaking something. I can pull it out, kind of show it to people. I can touch the things on it without worrying that I'm going to use some type of static electricity and break what's there. If you can find just some throwaway that's somewhere, and there's plenty out there that you can find, that's often a better way to go about learning what's on the inside than actually breaking apart someone else's system. But what I tell people all the time is just go to Google, go to the image search that's on Google and type in PC motherboard and look at the detailed high-resolution images of a PC motherboard and kind of see what's there. See if you can figure out what is on that motherboard. Even better, find out the model of that motherboard, go download the manual, and then in the manual, it tells you, here's where the memory slots are. Here's where the video card is. Here's the USB chip. Here is where the CPU fits. It tells you what all these things are, and you can see them in living color in that without having to touch, take apart, or in my case, break the motherboard that I'm using now.
Great. All right. Well, I will definitely do that. I do have a computer that our instructor gave us. I just haven't really focused on taking it apart, but I will. That's great advice. And I appreciate everything that you are doing as well. And I will check back and let you know how I did on part 1, and then after will come part 2. So thank you for all that you're doing for everyone.
Thanks for the call, Rachel. Best of luck.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
It's one of those challenges, though, if you don't have the materials available to you right now, at least you'll be able to see what other people are doing with it. And there's tons of YouTube videos out there, people pulling apart a computer and looking inside of it and putting different components together, and in some cases repairing those components. But to that first question that Rachel mentioned, which is scope and context, it's sometimes not obvious from the exam objectives just the entirety of the scope they're looking for. One of them is, install and configure a router. Well, gosh, there's a lot to go into with installing and configuring a router. What are they really talking about? Well, there's only certain things they want you to be aware of. And they're not asking you to know exactly how to install it for this particular model of device. They want you in a scenario to be able to understand when you would use this technology and what it takes to be able to make that happen. And there's plenty of places you can go online to maybe even go through simulations of that. I think Linksys has a great simulation page. You can go to any Linksys device, drill down into it, and suddenly you're using the device. It's another great way to configure a system without actually needing a system in front of you. Back to the phones. Let's go to the 215 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
This is Jean.
Hi, Jean.
Great. I've got you. Thank you. My question is, because I'm older and I have already performed help desk situations and specialized in pharmaceutical IT jobs, as far I'm an IT auditor, which I can't really talk about my jobs. But now when I go and look for a job, the people are younger, the hiring managers are younger, and they do not know what it takes to be an IT person, so to speak.
Right.
And I'm getting HR screeners, and I'm doing my best to become recertified, even in A+, even though I've performed all of this work in the past. I need a new certificate because now all the job applications say must have this certification.
Yep.
So I'm studying. I have the books. I have it on a tablet. Because you can't beat the system. You have to say, okay, I have a new certificate, and I know all of this business, and learning to shorten the resume to 1 or 2 pages as best I can. Because you can't know it all. Even when you go in, I find every company that I have gone into, I've had to start from the bottom up, because I needed to learn their system and how everything was connected. I needed to see the big picture. And it's just really frustrating now with COVID-19 and all to the American companies do not pay for your IT training anymore. So you need to go out and spend your money that you don't have to get recertified so that they'll at least look at your resume. So I am trying to network again. There's a technical networking professional group in the Philadelphia area.
Great.
And so I'll be joining their meeting again in June 15th. So because I want to stay in touch and I need them to know that I'm still here. And I have friends in that group too. So, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. But I'm wondering, what else can I do? What else can I do? I mean, every time that people see my resume, they want me to be a project manager. And that's not where my heart belongs. My heart is in IT. And I just am very good at it.
Good for you. I kind of have the same perspective too, because I've been in situations before where people said, you seem to be able to organize things well. Let's get you in a project management position. And that sort of happened when I moved into IT management, is they kind of wanted me to double up on that. And Gantt charts, it was just not for me. It's not my gig. Following up on people, you're effectively a grown-up babysitter in many regards when you're an IT manager, even more so when you're an IT project manager, it seems. And to that, my heart was not in it. There are some project managers I've worked through the years, which were phenomenal people that really knew their stuff. They were perfectly situated for that. I am not. So I went back to being systems engineer. It worked out much better for me. To your point, though, I would think, especially in some of the larger organizations right now, that it's going to be ramping up pretty quick. Compliance and I'm trying to lean back towards the skills you already have with auditing. The compliance parts that people are dealing with these days is extensive from a privacy perspective, certainly in financial organizations. We're seeing a lot more of it on the privacy side. Those are places where you might be able to move into an IT group, especially in a larger company that needs those types of skills. I think you kind of hit on it, and you were already kind of going down this road with the local IT group, is really getting a network of people in IT who understand your skills, who'd be able to understand more about what you're trying to do to fit you better. You don't need to work on a help desk. That's not where you're coming from. You already have some of the skills in IT that you'd be able to apply to some of these other pieces. It's now about finding the right role.
You would learn their structure, though. A lot of times I find being an IT auditor, people won't tell you what's really going on. And you have to walk carefully to get the information that you need. So you make friends with people in the company that you need that information. So I'll go and visit them during lunch or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'll say, hey, I recognize you. You work on that blah, blah project. But what happens when you're a contractor oftentimes is that once you do find the mistakes, they blame it on you and they get rid of you because the full-time employed management does not want to lose their job.
I can only imagine when the word auditor is associated with your particular job role, the type of "we don't want to talk to you" certainly comes into play, and that is a challenge.
I've asked them not to say that I'm an IT auditor. I said, please label me as an IT lead for the project, and leave the word auditor out of it because no one will talk to me.
Right. I probably would be in that same position. You don't want to say the wrong thing or do something that's going to be detrimental towards you or the company or your job along those lines. So I get it, and I understand. I think you were on the right track, though, in getting some listing of all of the different people you've worked with in the past, though. This is kind of the challenge when working in any IT role is it's often a very difficult job hunt right up until the point you actually get offered that new position. Then suddenly everything's fine. It's sort of the nature of the job hunts in general. It sounds like you've built a large grouping of people that you'd be able to add to the LinkedIn and at least ping a little bit to find out what they're doing. And you've got some work going on along with that technical user group. That's a fantastic place to start working on these. It sounds like you're doing all the right things.
They're amazing people in this group. They're all from the old IT school, and they went through all the difficulties of learning what they know, and they know it inside and out. You can't fault them. They're so good. And I when I listen to you on this podcast, I think, wow, that's right on. He's right on. Everything he's saying is absolutely correct. I hope people are listening to him because that really is what it is, what you're telling them. Yeah, I can back you up on everything I've heard. And I certainly will be looking at your videos for A+, because I'm not a fool. I know what sells. Yep. And if I have to get a certificate, then I will do that. Yes, I have multiple networking, engineering, certified master, certificate. Yes. Microsoft, Banyan, which a lot of people don't know. IP, TCP, email, all kinds of email systems. All of that IP networking. I would go into a police station and teach their person that was interested. And I said, you can sit here and observe me, but in the contract, I am not a trainer. So I'm restricted to what things I can say to you. And I said, I sympathize with you, but you need to go to the classes. But now I've trained myself so much that I buy the books. I look at the videos, I look at the CDs, I look at all the exercises that are given to me. I take all of the tests that I can find. before I go into the test center, because I'm very hyper with tests. I'm horrible with tests. And I really have to know my information like the back of my hand before I go in and take the test.
This is one of the things I think a lot of people do, especially on these exams, is learning all of that content. And I think you're right, though, having that foundational knowledge, sort of that that institutional knowledge, going back to Banyan Vines and Novell NetWare and knowing all of the things associated with that. It's the same thing except newer. There's nothing has changed on the network side. The Ethernet frame is exactly the same Ethernet frame it was 30 years ago. The problem, though, is that all these new certifications are out. And I think you're right. Getting some of those certs, having that cert just on your resume, getting it through that HR so that you can get to the next step is going to be an important piece. And I think the other important piece is just getting that getting your network of people working and making sure that it's firing on all cylinders.
I just talked with someone today who's a former U.S. Marine, and she was my boss back with Soft Switch and Lotus Notes to Lotus Domino to then IBM bought them. And then I was the QA lead in the test lab for adding in Java into Lotus Domino. So I was always doing a security check first thing in the morning, every system. And then, I have a QA background. I've been massively trained from the pharmaceutical business on every FDA nuance and every SOX nuance in the IT world. And I can't get a job. I mean, that's crazy. So I finally figured out I need that certificate.
I think that's going to help you. The things you're talking about, though, are spot on with what managers and CIOs want to have in their organizations. Now, you've got, if you've done anything with Lotus Notes, then you've been through the ringer of IT at this point. So now I think the point is you're absolutely right. Get the pieces around that. Get all of the other certifications you need around that. And I think it's going to get the eyes of other people, and don't stop the other pieces that you're doing with your person-to-person networking as well. You'll do fine.
It's so important. People are so important. It's about 60% of your job or more.
So this is the time to take advantage of that. Beef up the LinkedIn. Make sure you keep in touch with those people. Ping them constantly. Check in every month or so. Find out the things going on in their organization. Have they seen anything? Have they heard anything? Keep them top of mind so that when they see something, they'll also think of you and maybe even be more proactive about getting in touch with you as well. Hopefully that will help with you, Gene.
Yeah. I appreciate the encouragement, because I really need that with this isolation routine for the past year and a half.
Now we're coming out of it. Now it's the numbers are looking good. It's now a lot of companies are ramping up the IT side of things. This is where you make it happen. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I keep looking for you in any A+. And I have to go on, I have to keep I just have to keep practicing and pass those tests.
I think we all do.
And it sounds crazy because I'm so knowledgeable, but guess what? IT has a lifetime of about 10 years, and it comes and goes. And you have to be ready for the next new thing.
It is a constant path, a constant process of learning, certifying. You will never stop. There's never an end to it. And I think for a lot of the people that are just getting their A+, this is the beginning. But very often we have to go back and get those certs that other employers are asking about, even if it's something that we think we know. That's just sort of the normal way of doing things in this business. So I appreciate it. Thank you for calling.
Okay, thank you. All right.
It's one of the challenges, I think, when dealing with IT in general, and maybe people don't realize this, is you don't just learn it and then you're good. You're done. It's constant in its process. You will always be learning. There will never be a time when you're not learning about some type of technology, because not only are we trying to keep up with what we have now, there's new technologies coming out all the time. Some people consider this to be a negative. Some people think that this is something that they don't want to get involved with. I see that as being incredibly useful. It's something's always fresh. There's always something new to learn. I feel like I'm always getting better as a technologist. I'm always learning new technologies. I'm always doing things, especially now with the cloud. There's tons of things to be able to work through. I think the next step for pretty much everybody is to get the certification they're working on, and then it's just a plan for the next one. I think when I was with Palo Alto Networks, it was my last job working for another company. I think even then I accumulated 2 or 3 new certifications in that 7-year period. Even though I felt I was at sort of the pinnacle of my SE positions, I had a knowledge in technology that the world had never seen before. It was a brand new technology that we were rolling out. I became certified in that technology because I worked there and I needed to be certified in it. But I already knew everything. I was the systems engineer. I was already designing and installing these things. Yes, you have to go back and get the certification. It's just part of the process of what we do. It's a good level check for anybody else in the organization to know, oh, you got the cert? Great. We know that you know a minimum now of what we can expect for this particular set of technologies. That's what certification brings to the table. It's a great decision maker, or helps make the decision where people are trying to decide who to hire and perhaps who not to hire. It's better to have that in your pocket than not. So that's the goal I think all of us need to work towards. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We did sort of an after show, big after show today. What's interesting about our scheduling this week, normally we have time between our study groups. We're doing one tomorrow. So because of my crazy schedule, we'll do the Core 2 220-1002 tomorrow. I have a whole brand new set of questions for you from the Core 2 exam. We'll, of course, open up the phone lines and take questions from the chat room tomorrow as well. We'd love to have you come back for that and sit through that and learn something else about what you need to know with this certification. Thanks for joining us this time. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everyone.